Good morning, everyone. It is now approximately 9:37, and the Mobility Advancement Board would like to open the floor if we have any public speakers. Do we?
We do not.
We do
No.
not. Okay. Pardon me?
Too cold.
It's too cold. Yes, I know. Nobody wants to speak. That's how we feel as well. All right, so let me just get to the agenda here.
So, Madam Chair, we're going to ask you to call the meeting to order, and then he'll do the roll call.
Okay. Okay, so I would like to officially call this meeting to order. Can we get the roll call, please?
Good morning, everybody.
We're
Debbie
not
Madden?
hearing you so well.
Debbie Madden.
Here.
Thank you. Anthea Pennant Wallace.
Here.
Thank you.
No, but seriously, I'm not hearing you.
I may turn it up a
something
little
is
bit.
off.
You want me to turn it up a little bit? I can turn it up.
No, it's like googly-gog. Can't. Yeah, it is.
Let's see what we're on the top. Douglas Coleman.
Okay.
Here.
Better.
Thank you. Phil Allen. Here. Thank you, sir. And we have Ronald Frazier, Raymond McElroy, Shay Smith, and Erdal Dominus is here. Here. Thank you, sir. And we do have a quorum chair. Thank you.
Are you hearing me okay? Okay, just want to make sure. All right, so I think our first presenter is available. All right, so let's get started.
So, our first presentation is the Large Capital Project Coordination, and Mr. Kelleher, the Deputy County Administrator, will be making that presentation.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and the rest of the Oversight Board. First, thank you for your time and dedication to the MAP program and making sure that the monies are spent wisely. I know a former colleague of mine, Mr. Allen, has always raised the issue of coordination, so we were asked to come here do a brief presentation about how we coordinate these projects, because it's very important because all these projects are large projects, as you'll see shortly. So with that, I guess
Is it just
I don't know
me
which-
at the bottom and everybody low?
It's still, yeah.
which one do I do?
So,
Oh, whoops.
Roy, can
So
someone turn the volume up? We're not hearing. I'm not.
you're not hearing me?
Yes, but just low.
Okay.
It's a little low. I think it's the volume. I don't think it's you.
How about now?
Much better.
Okay, now I can hear myself. There's a little bit of an echo here. So, but I'm Kevin Kelleher. I'm the Deputy County Administrator, and I've been working. Wow, I've been working with the county for just a little over 35 years. So, but I've been in county administration, and part of my portfolio is making sure some of the large capital projects get done on time and, preferably under budget. However, during this past year, we've also brought on Dr. Isami Ayala Colazo, who I believe you met in December, but Isami comes with many years of experience doing large capital projects in government settings. She has wealth of project management experience, and she has been, for me personally, I've been a godsend because that's not my background. So, but she's been a great addition to the team. So we have this, and we have this. It helps out with the coordination, which I know has been a concern for this board as well as Mr. Allen in particular. But I'm just going to keep calling you out. You're the one who brought me here, so I'm going to keep But no, it's important. It's important. We want to make sure that you guys have the comfort level because these projects are important and they do get done. And that's where I want to start with is what has been done recently. And while some of this has to deal with Surtax, but it just goes to show you the size of the projects that we're talking about. And the first group here, and they're tied together, is the Convention Center, the Convention Center Hotel, and the bypass road, which the bypass road had Surtax dollars that were utilized for that. And this was a project that started decades ago, and Mr. Allen probably remembers it from his time working with the county. That there's been a couple of attempts to this, but we finally went forward. We were able to do the expansion, but this was a project coordination, and the team was led by Public Works, but it wasn't just Public Works. And when I say Public Works, you have highway construction, you have construction management, real property, but it also included Port Everglades because they're out at the port, included the CVB because they're the big client for the convention center and the hotel. It had finance. In finance, you had your purchasing, there was bond financing that paid for, funded this project. You had Office of Economic and Small Business Development that we were making sure that we were using local and small businesses, and of course county administration had the overall oversight over the project. So we do have that coordination, and I'm happy to say on October 20th we had 2 major milestones that we met, and that's where we opened up the convention center, and you see we have more than 1.2 million square feet now, and at the same day we also opened up the convention center bypass road, which takes you from, there's a lot of traffic in that area. It takes you from A1A through the port, the secured area of the port, but without having to go through the security because it's over it, and has you land right outside the convention center. So you bypass the port checkpoints. And this was something that was done on time and under budget, which was an amazing feat. Actually, it was done early. And then another project that we've recently completed and opened was on December 18th. We opened up our convention center headquarters hotel, which is Omni branded. It has 801 rooms, has a whole bunch of features with different ballrooms, meeting rooms, restaurants. There's the plaza area that's open. So and I don't know if you've seen it or have had a chance to visit it. It is a beautiful hotel. And on the same day, in the same property, we opened up a new CVB building. That's a 3-story office building that will help out with the tourism business. So these projects don't happen without coordination, and they don't happen without the coordination of those parties that I mentioned before. And so just so you can visualize it, in the upper left, you have the Omni Hotel. The middle, upper middle, you have the bypass road, and then you have all the folks that worked on the bypass road to the right of that. And then bottom right, you have the convention center, that's the Atlantic Ballroom that has one of probably the best view of the intercoastal waterway. So it's probably the most beautiful ballroom in any convention center that you'll ever visit. And then you have the bottom left, you have the one of the restaurant areas at the hotel. So now we're going to get to the part where you really are interested in is, well, that's done. So what have you done lately? So now we're moving on to what's the future. In the future, we have 3 big projects, and all of these are, in some fashion, are probably going to use Surtax funds. So the first one is the Airport Convention Center Transit Connector. And this is a light rail. It's 3.5 miles of light rail that's going to take you from the airport to the seaport to the convention center. And it will link those 3. So if you really envision it, we have a lot of cruise traffic. They can fly into the hotel, not worry about renting a car, and they can get on the light rail, takes them right to the port. They can catch their cruise. But sometimes they want to come a day or 2 earlier or stay a day or 2 on the back end. They can take that light rail still without renting a car and take it right over to the hotel. Likewise, if they want to come in town for a convention, light rail takes them all there, again, without, and I'm not anti-car, and I'm not trying to attack the rental car business, but it's just the convenience that makes it, linking these three economic engines is it's a game changer, and that's what we're, that's what this project is all about.
Also reduces congestion.
Excuse me?
It reduces congestion. If,
Which-
they're able to just take the rail.
I guess I should play to the audience a little bit here. And it reduces congestion, which is one of the main foundations of this distinguished board. So thank you for adding that in. I'll put that in my notes for the next time. But this project has, there's a project technical working team that's led by County Transit. But again, it has participants from aviation, public works, Port Everglades, CVB, finance, economic small business development, and county administration. And they all work together to, as this project develops. And recently they had a community meeting on January 15th where they introduced this project and the scope of the study and then the anticipated timelines that I don't want to steal the thunder from Ms. Kuff-Lonergan, who will probably be going over that in a few short minutes. But it's just one of those projects. And again, I'm here just talking about the coordination. This is not just transit doing their own thing in a silo. This is their lead, but their coordinations with all these other agencies, and county admin is making sure everyone's talking to each other. There's two other projects that I'm going to move on to very quickly, and that's the APM, the automated people mover, and that is a 16,000 square foot, linear foot elevated track, that guideway that will go around the airport, that will take you where you kind of, if you've been to like Atlanta, where you get on the train and it takes you around to the different terminals and whatnot. So we're going to have, that's what we're looking at here with 6 different stations, pedestrian bridge. So that's one project that's going on at the airport. Airport's lead to that one, working with the other agencies. And then you have the intermodal center, which is a multimodal hub where it'll have transportation, ground transportation coming in, buses. Hopefully the automated people mover will be linked to that. It'll be a parking structure. It will, it'll be 9 levels, have over 5.4 million square feet of space, and it'll have approximately 7,000 parking stalls in it as well. So it's the hub that links it all together. And I think prior to this, we got one question is are these projects, do they have independent utility? And each of these projects does have independent utility. And it's a great question. However, so each one of these 3 projects has the independent utility. They can function without the others. But to optimize it, we're trying to build a system, and building them, all 3 of them, will optimize it. But they can be done individually, and that's how we are structuring them. And then staying on the same theme of coordination, part of the goals of this board was to leverage money, and we hope to do that, and leverage money and get money from the feds and the states. And then if you get federal grant money, they always will have a project management coordination in part of this too. So not only do we do it on our side, in order to use the federal money, we're going to be forced to do it with them as well too. So there is a lot of coordination going on, and that was the reason for coming here today, just to give you an update on that and assure you that we are doing it. We've had the great successes, and we're looking forward to great successes in the future. And I see Mr. Allen will be asking me a question shortly.
Thank you so much for your presentation. All right.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
if I could maybe recall the last couple of years as this board has approved projects, we have broken these projects up into pieces. And there are so many examples of what I call, or what the industry calls, mega projects. examples being the Big Dig in Boston, the Bridge to Nowhere in Alaska, the high-speed rail project, which continues to flounder in California. And many of those cases were that they developed these projects, but they never tied them together. The bridge that was funded by, and many times it's because of federal requirements that these projects get into different agencies at the federal level. We at the local level, however, are trying to get as much funding as we can from federal and state. So we break these projects up, and then, as an example, with the most recently with the high-speed rail in California, they've now got overpasses to make way for the high-speed rail, but yet they don't have the ends funded. And in fact, there was just an announcement the other day that California is backing away from litigation that they filed at the federal level that rejected $4 billion worth of funding at the federal level, which now the project is based on these overpasses, overpassing nothing. And so we need to address and make sure we stay focused. You say, Kevin, that the projects are independent. They really aren't. I mean, you can't get the transportation. You've got to have the transportation hub at the airport finished in order to make the connector from the airport to the port. You've got to have maintenance facilities for that. There may be different technologies used to transport the people, but these projects have all got to come together. And we have asked the board or the county administration to also consider the integration of these projects so that we don't find ourselves with a bypass road through the port, or not the bypass road, the connector that doesn't have an end at the airport versus the bypass road, which was more independent and not subject to influence by the other projects, although it was designed, as I understand, to be supportive of those in the long run. There may be different funding cycles. There may be at the federal level, at the state level, the priorities may change. These are projects that take multiple years to come to conclusion. The people mover, the connector road, or not connector, the connector project is something that was conceived 20 years ago. We still don't have that done, waiting for aviation to be able to do the intermodal facility to maintain the project. So there needs to be a focus. That's why one of our discussions have been that the board, the county administration, needs to make sure that these projects are coordinated, that as these funding applications or as the feasibility reports are done, that they consider what happens to a project where they're proceeding at different time schedules and they don't connect in the end. So, Kevin, your attention and county administration has assured me in discussions that is being accounted for. We just need to make sure that as we move forward in approving additional funding from the Surtax, that these projects are in fact coordinated.
And we have that coordination, and we have talked about the different time frames and how you would do this if the time frames don't match up exactly, because each one of these projects is upwards of $1 billion each, and some are over that. So with these 3 projects, you're probably talking about $3.5 billion altogether. And looking at different funding, there are going to be different funding cycles. So how do we do? But our goal is to get all 3 of them done. And there may be some little adjustments we have to do, which is why it's important that they all have independent utility. That connector, the light rail, can be done without the other 2 projects. Is it the greatest thing? No. Does it work? Is it optimized? No. But it it is still has its own utility there, and you can get people to the station, and they can do that. It works better when you have the intermodal center. And the intermodal center will work better if you have this automated people mover. But each one of those can work independently, but ideally, and where we're going for is making sure that they're all done, and we are coordinating, and as you can see from the other projects, there is a lot of conversation, a lot of planning that goes on, multi-agency, where they're joined at the hips to get this done. And we even talked about potential the rail station as well into the intermodal center that can come in there as, eventually for, commuter rail or even, eventually inter county, service. So there's a lot of moving parts. It's fluid. My ears, and as county admin assured you, I'm here to again assure you that, we are coordinating and we're getting these things done. And that's why I wanted to start with those other 3 projects. They do take decades sometimes to do, but they eventually get done, and the end product is usually spectacular.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, Kevin, first of all, congratulations on the hotel, the convention center, and the bypass road. It's all wonderful. It really is.
Thank you. And if you get a chance to go to the hotel and you spend lots of money there, we would greatly appreciate it, because we have to pay back bonds for that. So,
my question, because you talk about coordination, I want to know how the coordination is going with the railroad, because if we don't have the railroad on board, I don't think these second projects are necessarily going to work. And I've heard that the railroad, as we know, is very tough to deal with. So can you talk about that?
yes, I can briefly talk about that, and I will agree that, at times railroads can be very difficult to deal with, because they have sometimes a singular focus, particularly if they're just doing freight and that's all they do. So passenger stuff gets in their way, and they don't want that. That's not part of their business. But we have had conversations with them. Of the 3 projects, 2 of the 3 can be built without impacting the railroad, any easements, aerial easements of that. The automated people mover, yes, we do need to have an aerial easement for that. We have been in active discussions for some time, and actually we have a meeting coming up towards the end of this month with the president of FEC to, continue discussing how we achieve that. But, things are progressing, but they don't progress that fast.
You mentioned someone else might talk about the schedule. I'm just curious, how long do you think it'll be before these other 3 or 2 are in place? Ballpark.
And I hate to do it, because when you start thinking about the timing, you can say, oh, that's so far away. But it comes upon us quickly. I believe that the light rail connector is slated for 2032. I'd have to double check on the IMC and the automated people mover, but they're around the same time. The IMC maybe a little bit after that, but they're all around the same time, the early 2030s.
Thank you.
Oh, can I? Hey, Kevin, thank you. I have a few questions. The first one would be about the automated people mover in the intermodal center. So the lead agency is the aviation department, which is understandable for the automated people mover segment of it. But for the intermodal center, are they not doing like a joint lead on it? Because wouldn't that be more transit focused with the light rail station, potential commuter rail station?
The reason why aviation's the lead on that is there's different funding pots of money in there, and we are looking at some aviation dollars on that. It is on or around aviation property, and a big part of that is that program is replacing parking that is at the airport. So I don't want to get too much into the title. They're the lead agency because we want to have one person in charge. If you know the old saying, if more than one person in charge, no one's in charge. So, but everything's coordinated with each other. I mean, it's just I can't impress upon that enough that they are working together, and Corey could probably speak about that project just as much as Mark can. And Corey being the transit director, Mark being the aviation director, who you know, because it's all interchanged because we're building a system.
Yeah.
It's not just one. And we are not looking at this, even though they have independent utility, which is important because that's how you get the funding. But we're looking at the overall project of this, the system.
Okay.
But do the feds, are they organized so that the aviation and the transportation folks at the federal level, where a lot of the funding is coming from, are different agencies? So you may be coordinating with the county agencies, but how about at the federal level?
And my esteemed partner over here has quickly got to this slide here that says that on here. When you deal with multiple federal agencies, they also will identify a lead agency when you go into this funding cycle. So there's a lot of coordination, but you have somebody who's a lead. So like if the primary one is FAA or Federal Highway, they would take the lead on it, and there could be other grant monies from other areas like FTA, but it would fall under that, and they would all coordinate. So there's a lot of coordination both at our level and the federal level.
And the second part is maybe overstepping oversight, but it's design-based. I just want to make sure when we do the intermodal center, I believe forgot the gentleman's name from aviation I presented before, that it didn't look like there was adequate or actually any bicycle or pedestrian access to the station. So I just want to make sure going forward we are incorporating those elements, because those are like transit-focused elements for the people of Dania Beach to access that station. So that's just like a note. And then this is also kind of a side thing, but since you're here, there's the potential that Brightline goes bankrupt in 2027. They once again missed another payment on their bonds, which has put them really low, I guess, at like super junk or whatever it is. I'm not going to ask you to comment publicly, but I would just hope that the county administration, if Brightline does come up for sale, that you guys have some plan in place to work fast and maybe make a quick move with the other counties, because it could be an amazing deal that lowers our track access fees and then gives us those rights. So just food for thought.
Thank you for acknowledging that I will probably not respond.
Kevin, I just, go ahead, Eric.
Thank you. I wanted to, congratulate, you, county staff, county commission, on these projects. I mean, they are truly mega projects anywhere, but those are also the projects kind of happens once every few decades. If my memory is right, the convention center hotel, the project, the concept, goes back at least 20, 25 years, maybe before that. But it happened, and also the size and the architecture, the location, and the Omni, brand is truly magnificent. The convention center itself was becoming less and less competitive, compared to some of our neighboring, locations, and that's also, while it was being used, it wasn't closed down, expanded, and that's truly, amazing accomplishment. I noticed a few days ago there was a reference article on the last year, passenger counts at the airport, and numbers have come down, and which happens, but it's kind of a reminder for us. We have a very popular airport, and per passenger cost has been one of the more attractive for carriers to operate there. But like everything else, at some point you lose that competitive advantage, or price of doing business, goes up. And what we have not done, like the intermodal center and the connection between different concourses, the people, mover project, that has been identified. I think at this point we need to, think about perhaps accelerating those projects, and these are large projects. By any means, we need to take the steps, necessary, but recognize the need of those projects, happen, sooner than later. And also just, one other thing I'm so happy to see, the federal government transportation fund matching is still at 50%. And that could change also anytime. And we should try to take advantage of that too.
And I'm going to look to see if Mark Gale was here, because that would be music to Mark Gale's ears. There is no person who wants those projects done quicker than Mark Gale. That being said, though, there's processes, particularly if you're using other people's money, the federal money, that you have to go through that process. There's certain things that you have to do in order to qualify, and that process sometimes takes longer than we all would like. But rest assured, I feel comfortable speaking for Mark Gale and even Monica Sparrow, the county administrator, and in the entire board, that we would love to have it done sooner rather than later. And we're trying to get it done as quick as we can. Unfortunately, there are certain natural progressions that would prevent us for that. And we'll continue on that path. And shifting gears to some of your opening comments here is you're right. These are big mega projects that don't come around too often. We finished one here, and it doesn't come without the vision and support and foresight of the county commission, who had the foresight to say, hey, let's put a hotel, let's expand our convention center, let's put us in the most competitive place in there, and support those actions, and that's what's key. And they were supportive of that, and they're very supportive of these projects, the light rail, the automated people mover, and the IMC at the airport as well too. And that's a key to is having that foresight and understanding, and we are pushing it as quick as we can. So,
one quick question: can you speak a little bit to any vulnerabilities when we're looking at federal funding? 50% of the funding is coming from the federal government. And so we know that, over a 10-year period, the priorities can shift. How has that in the past affected the timeline for completing projects? Or how do you envision some kind of contingency to deal with that on this upcoming project?
That's a great question. And there is vulnerabilities. Whenever you're using other people's money, you have to hope that they give you their money. And so, you have to go through their processes as well, but it's highly competitive. We are not the only county in the country that's looking for these big projects. So it's up for us to do all the groundwork to make sure that we make our best case so we get funding. There's also a lot of work behind the scenes where we're communicating with them or scheduling meetings and making sure they see the impact of these types of projects. We have an opportunity with a federal agency next week to show them, one of our projects, and we're juggling we just found out that the opportunity came available, and we're juggling our schedules to make it work. So they can see the impact firsthand, because when they show an interest, you want to make sure that they see the full impact, so they say, okay, now I know that's a project we should be funding. So, but that's always a vulnerability when you're trying to do that. And we have teams who are always out there scouring what monies are available, what it takes, and what are all the checkpoints that we need to do to make sure that they look at Broward first.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Not for Kevin, but for Gretchen. Gretchen, can you tell us how much Surtax money went into the first 3 projects, plus or minus, and how much is earmarked for the next 3 projects? You don't have to do it today if you don't have it, but that's the only money we can probably control.
Yeah, I think on the first 3 projects, it was only the bypass road, the connector, that connector that
Yes.
there was Surtax money utilized in. Obviously, for the second 3, there's going to be more of a reliance on the Surtax, but we're trying to leverage those dollars because whenever you go to the feds, they're not paying for the whole thing. They want to make sure that we're putting our money towards that, and that's where these dollars are going to be instrumental in us getting federal funding.
That's why I'm going to say I think that's another good thing about the surtax that we voted on is we wouldn't have a chance if we didn't have that money.
Without a doubt.
And I assume, Gretchen, we're on schedule still collecting it wise? Or was gas down and it's down? Or
We're going to talk about that a little bit
all
later.
right, thank you. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Kevin, and congratulations to everyone involved. Thanks.
No problem. Thank you. Have a great.
All right, next on the agenda, we have Broward County Transit Department update. All right. Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So, good to see you all again, and thank you for an opportunity to have a chance to share with you what's going on at Broward County Transit. And there's a couple things that we're going to cover today. Going to, obviously, as always, kind of talk about, what's happened since we last met. We're going to spend some time talking about the comprehensive operational analysis, and then we're going to get to some of the projects that are in primo. And so let me start off with what happened since we last met.
Corey, if you don't mind, I just want to say to our board members, I know you have a time deadline within which you have to leave. So I just want to advise everyone, if you have questions, just take notes, and then you can ask the questions at the end. And you can let us know
Okay.
which section.
All right. Thank you.
I know you
Thanks.
have a time
Thank you, ma'am.
specific.
Okay. So there's been a lot since we last met, and I'm super excited to share all of it. First of all, as Kevin mentioned, we had our first kickoff meeting, which is our public-facing meeting on the Airport Seaport Connector, and I know there's a lot of discussion just now on that project. And what I'm excited to share with you is that we did have quite a bit of interest in the project. We actually had in the room about 55 people, and we had about 70 people who joined us online. We shared the project development and environmental process with the public because a lot of people don't know what it takes to go from ideation to actually building a system. We also talked about the potential alignments for the service, which is going to be wholly on most of it's going to be on county property with the exception of the maintenance facility, which is likely not to be on a county property. And we also shared with them what the service could look like and the overall effort in general. And so the questions ranged from what's in it for the residents, because there is a perception that this is something that would benefit the tourists more so than the residents, which we were able to mitigate that concern on 2 fronts. First of all, we know that tourism is one of our largest industries here in Broward County, and so it is something that generates quite a bit of revenue for us. But also, there are lots of jobs that are going to come from this project. And I know that I've shared a statistic with you in the past that for every $1 billion that you spend on an infrastructure investment over the course of that time, you generate about 49,000 jobs. And those jobs will be local, and the residents of the community will be able to take advantage of those jobs. But I think more locally to the area, the residents were very curious about how would they be able to access the new service. So that was some of the concern. And so we'll try to figure out how we can possibly make that happen. We also heard that there was curiosity on the ridership, what it was going to look like. And we're in the very early stages of the project development environmental stage. Part of that does include some level of ridership analysis, so we'll have more refined numbers as we go through that process. And they also wanted to talk about costs. They just wanted to know how much it's going to cost and where the funding was coming from. And we did highlight the fact that we do have a plan to use quite a bit of Surtax money, which is very important. And I know just now you asked Kevin a very important question, which is what is the risk from the federal level, since we're looking at about a 50% contribution, what that would mean to our projects if priorities shift as things can happen in DC. One of the things that's super helpful is when you get to what's called the full funding agreement process, when you sign on the dotted line, you're kind of locked in on that funding. And the federal government generally pays its bills, right? And so we would be in a good position at that point. What it does, though, signal for future projects, right? If there's certain dollars that you think are available and that those priorities change, there's the risk that funding might not be there. But to reassure you that once you get to that full funding agreement and both parties execute that agreement, just like with all of our grants that we have now, the federal government honors of those commitments. So we can, once we get there, we would be in really good shape to know that the project is funded and real. Now, what they also do is the risk assessment, for example, that we just did with the commuter rail project. Once they allow us to go into that next phase, which is called going into the engineering phase, they will lock the dollar. So whatever that number is, that's their contribution at the federal level. So if the project costs mushroom or balloon, it's going to be up to us to figure out locally how we fund that money. And I will reiterate to you, we just put together our financial plan for the BCR South project that we had to submit to the FTA. And what was very important for us to be able to demonstrate is where the local contributions are coming from and how likely those monies are to be available. And when they score your project, and so we're up against a lot of projects across the country, when they score our project, we will have a higher score because we do have this taxing authority here locally. So it's a big, big help. And I can't stress upon you how important it is for the Surtax money for us to be able to move forward with other federal contributions. And so that is the town hall meeting, not town hall meeting, but the kickoff meeting. Then we also had another internal accomplishment. So we had our first ever combined graduation ceremony for 3 disciplines. We've never done this before. Our bus operators, our supervisors, frontline supervisors, and our bus traffic controllers. So they all happened to finish their training around the same time. And so we had a very large combo graduation ceremony for everyone. Normally with the supervisors, we kind of thank them, shake their hand. There's a very small ceremony, and then they go out and they supervise. But this time what we did was we expanded it to all 3 groups, and we actually invited their families, and we held it in this space here in this room, and it was very well attended. We had 24 bus operators graduate, we had 8 supervisors graduate, and 2 bus traffic controllers graduate. So that was just a fun event to share with you. The other part of that is that in the transit industry, one of the positives of being in the transit industry is that you can see career growth. You can come in at a certain level, you can come in at a frontline level and progress up in an organization. And so what we did see as part of that graduation is the person that came in as a bus operator is now a supervisor. and the supervisor is now a bus traffic controller. And so that progression is in place. I just want you to know that that's how the industry operates, and that's how we operate here at Broward County Transit. Another phenomenal thing that happened was we launched a new app. So I'm not sure if everyone is aware, but we had 2 apps at Broward County. So we had the one app that you kind of paid for your fare, and then we had another app where you planned your trip. And so we combined those 2 apps, and we are calling it Ride BCT app. It is now available for download on Google and Apple. We launched it on January the 20th and 18th, January 18th. And so far, we've had over 10,000 downloads, 7 of them on Apple, and then another 3 on Google, the Google App Store. And so what we're excited about is that what's different with this app, other than it being a combo, we also upgraded the app. So now you can use Apple Pay or your Google Wallet to pay for your passes. So that's one of the upgrades included in there. And so we're excited about that as well. The other thing that we've done is we've been part of the community participating in the MLK Day Hollandale Beach Parade, and we've also launched and made some route changes, some minor modifications to our routes. We also took advantage of some of the information that we received from the comprehensive operational analysis, which we'll be talking about in more detail soon, on the Route 4 and the 6. We have, one of the things that the comprehensive operational analysis identified is certain routes where we have lower than the ridership is lower than what the equipment that we have out there is what we actually need to use. And so for these 2 routes, we've already moved forward with implementing that COA recommendation to change the equipment that we use on those routes to the smaller buses. So we did that as well. So we've been busy since we last met, and thank you for letting us, again, come back. Okay, now here's another great story. So we have won our 2nd AdWheel Award in the last 2 years through the American Public Transportation Association. This is ginormous because my entire career I've always wanted to be able to stand in front of a group of people and say we won one of these, and we've now done it twice. And thank you. And so what this is a national recognition of our creative, and it is super exciting. There's over 350 applicants, and we won first place, and there's only 3 categories. Last time we won it in education, and this time we won it in workforce development in terms of social media promotion. And so I'm going to play for you. I think you've seen this particular ad before, but I want to play for you the winning. Both of these won, but I want to play for you one of the winning ones.
My name is Ola, a tourist currently visiting the United States from Israel. I would like to take this opportunity to share an exceptional experience I had with one of your outstanding bus drivers. The day was rainy, and as a visitor unfamiliar with the fare system, I struggled with the machine. In that moment, your driver, Angeline, exhibited extraordinary kindness and patience. She greeted me with a warm smile and calmly helped me navigate the fare process. Later that evening, I missed the last bus back to Coconut Creek. The night was dark, rainy, and I began to feel lost. But in a stroke of luck, an out-of-service bus stopped beside me, and it was Angeline once again. Although she was no longer in service, she graciously opened the door and offered to drive me to the nearest station. Her kindness extended far beyond her duty as a driver, as she made sure I was safe and reassured, going out of her way to help me. She is not only an asset to your team, but a shining example of what exceptional service looks like.
Hi, my name is Angeline Luxano. I want to tell every operator, when you work, try to work from all of your heart. Broward County Transit, just try.
And then there's another one that we also won for. So this was great. And it just shows how much our workforce does care about our riders, our passengers in the community. And, you know, I wanted to just kind of reemphasize the fact that we do care about our passengers. We really do. I know that we don't always get it right every time, every day, but we do our best to do that. And it's really important that we do get it right. But I also want to emphasize what we do for the community, because sometimes what people don't understand is that while our primary objective is to provide public transportation services, the reality is that the community and our passengers rely on us to help often. And our bus operators, our customer service reps, all the folks that work on the front line and touch the public go above and beyond almost every day to help the community or help somebody. As example, we have people that actually come to our facilities that need medical attention. On average, we'll have somebody come to us this year, actually from October 1st through the last quarter of last year, we have about 46 EMS requests for people who have nothing to do. Sometimes they're our passengers, and they get on, they say, I have a heart problem, I can't breathe, I'm having an episode, and they're asking for help to people that just come up to our customer service windows and say they need help. We also have helped find 23 missing persons. So they come to us and they say that there are people who are missing, and we help them find them. And sadly, we also had someone that was on the verge of committing suicide that came to us for help. So I just want to reinforce and reemphasize that all the people that work at Broward County, we're very proud of where we work, and we're also proud to support the community, and we do care about the community and our passengers. Okay, now the other question that came up at the last meeting was about our ridership. And so this ridership shows over time how our ridership has changed. And you can see around the 2015, 2014 timeframe that our ridership started to dip significantly. And it's our understanding, although at the time we didn't do any specific analysis or studies to find out why that ridership dipped, outside of reaching out to the industry and trying to get a feel for, what was going on industry-wide. And what we believe the case to be is that, just like Mr. Hooper said, part of it is the infiltration of the ride share into our market. We also saw at that time the gas prices dip, and we believe that that was also a contributing factor. And so, we don't know Broward to be any different than national trends. We tend to kind of follow whatever else has happened in the industry. So those are two markers that we believe are the root causes of those ridership declines. There was no change in our service. There was nothing like an event that caused us to be on the front end of that change. So we believe it was completely environmental. The other thing that came up at the last meeting was an interest in us to reach out to the interfaith community and to see if that market is something that we could establish more firmly. And so I want to tell you that we have done a little bit of work in that area, and we are excited because what we're going to be doing is we're going to create an interactive map. And this map is going to have nonprofits, faith-based organizations, everybody, where you can click on your location of your, and then actually get how you would get there by transit. So we are working on that now. There's a little bit more that we need to do in this area, but I just wanted to know it's on our radar, and we are definitely working on it. The other thing is that the TOPS, we had some feedback on TOPS. We're continuing to meet with the group that came here, and we have worked down a lot of their issues. We've done the inspections on all of our vehicles. We have not found any holes in our TOPS equipment. We have removed some of the windscreens, the sneeze screens that were up that we put up during COVID. We did find that some of the handrails that people were using, about 15 out of 300 inspections, were a little loose, and we've tightened those. But we really listened to them and did our best to respond to their concerns. The other thing is that we were asked by the mayor actually about whether we have an emergency number for people to call if you have a problem with tops and you really need some kind of emergency assistance. And so we in 2 weeks put that together. So now there is a number that if you have an urgent escalation and you need help that you can call. And that number is 844 TOPS 911. And so when you call that number, what'll happen is you'll get an IVR that starts off the conversation, tells you where you've land, you're welcome to the TOPS escalation line, urgent escalation line. It also tells you that, as by law, what we have to do is we have to explain that the number is being recorded, the call is being recorded. And then we also encourage someone that is having a medical incident to hang up and dial 911, and then a live agent picks up after that. So that is also something that we've followed up with. And again, I just want to make sure that we are hearing what you're saying and we're being as responsive as possible to the feedback. And with that, the other thing that we're here to talk about is the comprehensive operational plan. And I'm going to have one of my colleagues, Barney McCoy, join me at the podium to tell you all about it. But what I wanted to share with you is that, when we in this room, right, talk about a comprehensive operational plan, it is something that we probably can wrap our heads around because we've been talking about it for a very long time. But when you try to go out into the public and talk about a comprehensive operational plan, they don't know what you're talking about. And they don't understand what you mean by that. And so what we've done is we've rebranded it and we're calling it Transit Forward 2040 Vision Plan. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Barney. And he's going to walk you through it.
Will you be back up to talk about the numbers for a second?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes. I'm not going anywhere.
Good morning. Barney McCoy, Assistant General Manager of Service and Strategic Planning for Broward County Transit. As Corey mentioned, we wanted to talk to you this morning about the COAs, an effort we started back in 2023 to address some of the concerns and moving the system forward. Okay, what we talk about today is the Transit Forward background, give you a strategic outlook, talk about the public reach for the effort, the anticipated costs, and then the reciprocating call to action. Okay, background. Okay, Corey alluded to what a COA is, and that COA is an action industry term. It means comprehensive operations analysis, but it's not a very attractive term. So when you ask what it does, a COA is actually a systems check. It gives you a checkup on your system in terms of efficiency. And what you do is you take rider feedback, data science, and projected growth, and you combine these things to develop a system that's more accessible, better connected, and provides a higher level of service. Okay, you say, what's the big idea behind this effort? Traditionally, we as an operator, we tweak our system with service changes throughout the year. And a lot of times that's in response to rider feedback or rider requests. We wanted to make sure that the public understood that the COA is going to be transformative. And what we were looking to do was make substantive and material changes to the system that would integrate Primo with some of our existing services, add new modes and new levels of services to bring accessibility to the customer. If you're familiar with transit, transit operates on a premise historically where we expect the rider to come to transit. In terms of defining this system for the future, we acknowledge to be more competitive and get more ridership, that we would have to operate in a paradigm where we took that service, these services rather, to the public. In terms of what we heard from the public, okay, we wanted to bring, as I mentioned, in terms of increased or improved accessibility and bring transit closer to everyone. We wanted to enhance frequency by providing more service, and we wanted to expand our service hours to meet demand in terms of adding earlier service and later service across the system. Okay, you may ask why now? It's a good question. County's changing. County's growing. What we saw through the COA effort is that we've got projected growth for the county. Certainly coming out of COVID in this post-pandemic environment, what we saw that there was a change in travel and commuting patterns, even specific with the days and date types that the commuters are traveling. But again, we wanted to take this information to deliver a blueprint for a faster, more efficient, and more connected system. Voices from the community. Okay, we wanted to make sure that we had as robust as public involvement in this effort as possible. We wanted to make sure that the public supported us in this effort, that they saw value in the efforts and the investments made, and help us to design the system. This including meetings, with policyholders, cities, and the like. To that point specific to public involvement, in this effort we had over 8,000 touch points. The backbone for these touch points, though, were the O&D surveys, the intercept surveys. And what we did was we collected approximately 7,300 statistically valid surveys from our customers. And it asked them questions about where they were going, where they started their trip. And we even asked some attitudinal questions as to things they thought we were doing well, places that we could serve, or things that we could do better. We had staff interviews internal that we met with operations, maintenance, and administrative staff to have them to buy into the process. We had pop-up events across the county through all 9 districts. We held a listening session with each one of the municipalities who chose to participate. And we also had an online e-engagement in terms of surveys, but we took these 8,000 touch points and used those as the backbone of the basis for these service recommendations. Okay, I mentioned earlier about data science. These are the data points that we use in terms of design the system, or make these recommendations rather. We use the census data, which gives us the demographics specific to ethnicity, income, and age. That's a 10-year look. We also use a 5-year touch point called the American Community Survey. It gives us that same type of information specific to demographics, income, and age, but at a 5-year interval. We use the longitudinal household employment data. What that tells us is the number of households across the county, who's employed in that household, and the nature of the work that's done from the working individuals in that household. Cell phone data. This is a new technology for BCT, and that we've used it for both in developing the Primo plan and for the Transit Forward 2040. And what cell phone data is, it allows us to access non-identifiable data from cell phones, and it allows us to track these across the county in terms of trips. What we did was we took this data, overlaid it on top of our existing network, and we used it to confirm and verify that the services that we had in place were indeed actually meeting the needs of our customers. And we also used it to identify potential areas in the county where we had areas for improvement in terms of transit deserts and growth. We use the advanced scheduling software to design the system in terms of producing the schedules needed to implement the service. I mentioned earlier about the origin and destination survey, which was actually, again, 7,300 statistically valid touch points. And that we used heat maps as well as a layer to identify projected growth to make sure that we were able to access into those trip generators and trip connectors. What our customers told us through the surveys, they wanted our service to be on time. They told us that they wanted to be able to make easier transfers to travel throughout the county. They wanted us to add technology in terms of a tap-to-pay option, and they wanted to make better connections to be more competitive with the auto travel time. Okay, the strategic outlook for the Transit Forward 2040. Okay. What's the vision? The vision is we wanted to define a more modern, better connected transit system. Again, we wanted to provide a better level of accessibility for the residents of the county. We wanted to combine the Primo corridors as the backbone, and then integrate our fixed route system, modes such as microtransit, community shuttle, and build a system that was more modern and flexible. Again, that was done with the intent for us to bring transit to our riders. We wanted to make sure that you understood that we're not just about moving buses. We want to move from a paradigm where we have buses only to where we improve lives and move lives. We want to expand access to jobs, schools, identify these new trip generators, but again, just to build a more integrated system so that there will be connectivity throughout the county. What that means specifically for Broward County, you're going to see faster trips across the county. Again, you'll be able to reach your destinations a lot quicker. We wanted better connections, again, to be more competitive with travel times in terms of comparison with the auto. We wanted to add more service and service options. That goes back to having more frequency, better frequency, starting the routes earlier, ending them later, and again, introducing new modes of service such as microtransit. We wanted to add or modernize our amenities. That's both, infrastructures related to new transit facilities and infrastructure actually at the stops. But again, all of this put together will give us a more accessible transit system. Now, what does that mean in terms of the next chapter? I mentioned earlier about tweaking the system versus material changes. The recommendations from the COA will give us, over the life of the plan, 20 new proposed microtransit zones that will allow us to address some of the transit deserts that we have in the county, and it'll also allow us to provide a lot of this first mile and last mile connectivity that we talk about. I mentioned earlier about doing something different than tweaking the system. If we implement the plan as proposed, it'll give us over 100 major anticipated changes for the system. This comes in terms of new routes, route realignments, things to make our service more direct, and introducing and realigning new services. But the goal at the end, and the consultant was charged with this at the start of the project, that one of their goals was we want to grow ridership. We want to increase and improve ridership across the system. How we would accomplish that is with these following mix of services. You have our fixed route system, that's the backbone of the system. We would implement bus rapid transit. We give us higher and better frequency service on our most heavily traveled corridors. We wanted to implement high frequency bus, which would also give us better service, 15-minute frequency on some of the more heavily traveled corridors. But these were also corridors that did not meet the criteria in the pre-mode plan to warrant bus rapid transit or light rail transit. We wanted to implement light rail transit, implement commuter rail, and then go back to the microtransit community shuttle to fill in some of these areas in terms of transit deserts and better accessibility. Again, improved service frequency. What we're talking about is adding more service, particularly during our peak periods, in the morning, peak periods in the afternoon, and again for some issues that we've identified on the weekend as well in terms of areas needing more frequency. Longer service hours. On average, what we're talking about is adding approximately 2 hours of additional service either at the start of the day or end of the day for some of our most heavily traveled routes. And then to make sure that we also put these additional services out there for routes that may connect into these services to make sure they're able to make that last connection in the evening. Again, more ridership. With the nature of these changes, the goal is to grow the ridership in the system. Corey mentioned earlier about the 10-year projection or 10-year growth or decline in ridership. We're hoping to be able to capture some of this ridership back, though, with the implementation of a lot of these recommendations. Larger coverage area. This speaks specifically to the transit deserts. There are areas in the county that we identified that goes back to actually when the surtax initially passed, where we don't have transit service. A lot of these areas are areas where we know we would like to have transit service, but in a lot of these areas, they're not necessarily have things of what we call transit supportive densities. So what we're talking about is expanding the coverage area to cover these. We're talking about things introducing either different types of community shuttle, different community shuttle routing, and things like microtransit. Again, more efficient service with better connections. A lot of what we heard in our outreach was that it takes a long time to make connections to travel across the county. What we're talking about doing is making better connections with our service. And in a lot of instances, what that's going to require us to do is realign some routes to provide better direct service and use modes like microtransit to provide this next level of connections into these routes. When the consultant was tasked for this effort, we asked them to give us a phased rollout. Traditionally, when COAs are done, the consultant would give you just a large body of implementations that are what I would call one-offs, and that you can make in a lot of the changes. They're not necessarily dependent on other things that are going on in the system. What we tasked the consultant to do was give us a near-term, mid-term, and a long-term look. Near-term being years 1 through 5, mid-term being years 6 through 10, and long-term being 11 through 15. What you see here is anticipated target frames across the top and the improvements for each one of these terms on the left. If you look at what's going on in the near term, you get a lot of what we call the low-hanging fruit. You get the service band increases, frequency improvements, improved connections, realignment, high-frequency bus. But a lot of these things are operational things that we can do that we refer to, just low-hanging fruit. As you move to midterm, though, you see that you get everything that you get in the near term with the introduction of the primo projects, being specifically bus rapid transit, light rail transit, and commuter rail south. As we move through years 11 through 15, you see you get everything. You get the service span improvements, you get the bus rapid transit, light rail transit, and then a projected implementation for the commuter rail north and long term. But all of these changes put together over the 15-year time frame is expected to give us the system that we talked about earlier in terms of being visionary. Okay, what you see here on the left is the current system map for BCT. And this is our all-in services across the county. And what you see to the right here is what the system will look like in terms of 2040. The shaded areas that you see here, though, are actually the areas where it's recommended that we place the microtransit zones. Now, talk about public outreach as we move forward for this effort. What we plan to do for the heading into winter and spring for 2026, so as we start the second round of public outreach, as I mentioned earlier, we want the public to back us on this plan and feel that the investments are worthwhile. We're going to start with pop-up events that will go across the county, all 9 districts. We'll have the online survey as we did with the first round of public involvement. We plan to have the open houses internally for our operations, administration, and maintenance staff. We actually want to also use our internal resources to be ambassadors for us for getting this plan out. We want to have virtual meetings as well to do this, and then we would also be partner agency meetings specific to FDOT, NPO, and the business community. Now, we've talked about the plan. Let's talk about what we think this will cost us to implement it. If we implement the plan as proposed, we are based on projections and modeling from the consultant. We expect to grow the ridership by approximately 68% between now and 2040. This $1.4 billion, though, is what it's going to cost us in terms of investments to get that done. What you see here is an estimated cost summary broken out from short, mid, and long term for what these implementation of service recommendations are going to cost us. But it all totals up to the $1.47 billion in the lower right-hand corner. This includes service for the fixed route, the implementation of the microtransit, and changes within the community shuttle network, in addition to infrastructure for the long term. But what we want to do at the end of the day is have a plan that's approved, have a plan that's funded, and then turn it back over to transit and let us do what we do. Having said that, any questions this morning? I'm sorry. Okay, I'll turn this over to my colleague now. My apologies.
Okay, so we're in the home stretch here, everybody. We're going to talk about Primo and the Primo status. I'm just going to kind of give this started, and then I'm going to have a colleague join me to wrap it up. Okay, so this is our Primo bus. This is out and about promoting Primo to let everybody know that it's coming, and we're excited to be able to share that with you. Just a reminder about the foundation of what Primo is based on. First of all, one of the goals was to improve mobility for all. Also, we wanted to implement equitable transit solutions so that everybody could take advantage of it. We want to make sure that we enhance and provide opportunities for economic development, and we want to improve the safety, security, and and ensure appropriate environmental stewardship. And then lastly, we want to integrate and serve our communities. Overall, what we're going to gain from this is, again, 200 miles of new premium transit service. We're going to attract on that service a ridership of about 23 million. The goal is to have about 100% no or low emission equipment to take advantage of new intelligent transportation systems. And lastly, to make sure that whatever we build integrates seamlessly into the communities that we will be operating within, and that they're aesthetically interesting enough to be acceptable to those communities. Again, I cited this stat earlier in my presentation. For every $1 billion that you invest in public transportation projects of this nature, the American Public Transportation Association has assumed that you would get about 49,000 jobs out of that over the 20-year life cycle of that asset. So that's very impressive, not only from the point of ideation when you're starting to think about these projects, when you're starting to plan them, you're designing them through construction and then operation and maintenance. It's quite a bit of opportunities for a lot of Broward County residents and quite frankly, South Florida residents. We want to make sure that we again are a catalyst for economic development. We know that is happening and will continue to happen. We've already seen this in Hollywood. If you've been to the proposed location for the Hollywood station, when I first came here, it didn't look like what it looks like now. There's a whole building there, and the city has created a transit-oriented development district there to support growth. And so there's housing there now. There's some commercial interests there that are very different, and there's a lot of planned growth in that area. Also, we know that these types of investments, particularly when it comes to rail, result in transit-oriented development. We've also now seen that happen with bus rapid transit. That did not used to be the case, but we've got concrete examples now of where bus rapid transit resulted in substantial TOD development as well. And then we want to obviously expand opportunities for our small businesses to be able to be a part of these tremendous opportunities. So I'm going to sit down now and let Abhishek come up and talk to you about where we are with Primo now. Just want to point out that the network has not changed since you saw it. We just changed the map. We feel that this is a more stylized map and a little easier on the eyes in terms of figuring out what's happening for transit. But there's still the breakdown by mode on here. And as you can see, we're still looking at 26 miles of commuter rail, 23 miles of light rail, 76 miles of bus rapid transit, and 100 miles of high-frequency bus service. So Abhishek Dayal, who is our Chief Infrastructure Officer, is going to take us to the end of the presentation on Primo.
Good morning, everybody. Again, I'm Abhishek Dayal. I'm the Chief Infrastructure Officer. It's great to meet you all and present our exciting program on the Primo. Starting with the BCR South, as many of you know, this is our commuter rail project connecting the Aventura station down in Miami-Dade over to Broward County. And so we're looking at 10.5 miles all along the Florida East Coast Railway corridor with 3 stations. We've made a lot of progress on this project. As was mentioned previously, we have advanced in the FTA funding process, the funding cycle. We recently submitted an application to enter the next phase of the Capital Investment Grant Program. So we're keeping our fingers crossed and hoping to hear a very favorable outcome from FTA shortly. The project is scheduled to open in 2032. The estimated investment is $712 million. And as Corey had mentioned previously, this was the outcome of the risk assessment that we performed with FTA's project management oversight consultant last year. Okay. Moving on to BCR North, that's north of the BCR South project. This is an additional 15.5 miles towards getting to Deerfield Beach with 4 proposed stations. This is a project that was approved by our commission last year. And we estimate the investment to be about $1.2 billion. However, we have not done any studies on that. We do plan on doing a formal PD&E study later this year, and that's essentially going to inform the full scope and the cost and the schedule for this project. So stay tuned on that. The Airport Seaport Convention Center project, or the connector, that's something that was discussed earlier in this meeting. The 3.5 miles of light rail that'll connect our 3 major economic engines in the county. We are super excited to get the PD&E efforts started last year. In fact, we had a great turnout, as Corey had mentioned, at the public kickoff meeting last month. Project is scheduled to open by 2032. Total estimated investment is about $1.56 billion. Moving on to our first bus rapid transit project, first out of the 6 that are in the Primo plan. The Oakland Park Boulevard BRT corridor. This is one of our highest ridership routes in our system, and so it made sense to invest in a bus rapid transit project. So this is 15 miles. It connects Sawgrass Mills Mall onto the west to Ocean Boulevard onto the eastern side, with 10 proposed station locations. We're looking at exclusive transit lanes wherever it's feasible. We are currently working on a 30% design. We are in the PD&E process. A portion of this corridor is on FDOT roadway, so we do have to follow the lane repurposing requirements over there. The anticipated ridership is about 2.4 to 3.2 million. This project will be open in 2030. The total estimated cost right now is about $285 million. One thing I should point out, this project is all Surtax funded. Again, this is a project that is super critical given the high ridership on this corridor. So the county and the Surtax committee agreed that this would be completely locally supported for this project. The next one in line is the corridor along US 441 or SR7. This will be the upper limits are Commercial Boulevard and all the way down to the county line. With 16 branded stations, that's 15 miles total. With again, the exclusive transit lanes, that's something we'll be exploring to make sure that we provide that reliable service along this corridor. This will also be connecting with several of the Primo corridors. As you can see on the map, several east-west connections intersect with this important corridor. We will be doing a PD&E study very soon. We do have a project manager assigned, and we expect to begin that a little bit later in this year. Project opening is 2033, with the estimated cost at this time is at $236 million. Of course, the PD&E study will further inform and refine the project cost. So this is just a snapshot of all the projects that we have. Of course, I only showcased a few of those projects, but you can see here several projects, including commuter rail, light rail, and the 6 BRT corridors are shown here in the next 15-year horizon. Many of them we are in PD&E phase or in the planning phase, and we hope to move on to that next phase to really get the shovels on the ground on this exciting program. And this is a summary of the capital costs for the projects, the light rail, commuter rail, bus rapid transit, and we also included the high-frequency bus network that Barney talked about as part of his presentation. All in all, total investment of about $5.2 billion, a significant investment in the county for transportation. And with that, we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you, all of you, for this very. It's a lot of information for us to all, take in. So, and I know my teammates here have a lot of questions, and I just want to go ahead and dive in on some of the questions that I have, and then I'll certainly open it up. There are a couple of things that I was curious about. And let me just start with this last one, the slide where we're talking about the capital cost summary. It would be good to get a sense of how much on each of these projects penny tax dollars being utilized? Is it 100%? Because I know there's one project you mentioned, one for $285,000 that you said it's all surtax.
Right.
So it would be good to see a side by side so we have a better sense of, what percentage of investment we're making there. That was one question. And the other question I had, regarding the surveys that are being done, are we checking demographic details on the respondents? And I ask this because the age of some of our riders matters, right? We know we're in this phase of the silver tsunami, and that some of those riders that may be taking buses now, may just be at home. And just when I think about the fact that we have a younger population that is probably more adept at taking Ubers and that kind of thing. How are we factoring that? How the demographics change of this county will impact the types of rides that we're proposing that we want to continue to invest in. And as we do that, I would imagine that you are checking ridership on each of the different service models being proposed and tracking that, so we don't keep investing in a service model that is not necessarily working, right? And those are my questions. So I'll take a pause there.
Okay, great questions. And I'm going to have Barney Barney, why don't you come up and help me with some of them, please? Let me just start big picture. The model that we continue to operate from a financial perspective is that 25% of the local match is coming from the surtax. That is the baseline operating principle when it comes to the financial model that we've used, with the exception of the Oakland Park Boulevard. The reason why we wanted to fund Oakland Park Boulevard 100% through surtax was because we thought at the time that decision was made that would expedite the process, right? That would give us a quicker delivery because we wouldn't have to go through some of the federal requirements and the NEPA requirements. However, what we then were faced with was the lane repurposing effort that Abhishek mentioned through FDOT. And that is in the middle of all of our early planning and initial design efforts, what was required for that process changed. And so we are slightly delayed because of working through all of that, right? And so until they say, yes, you can repurpose a lane, or until we offer a solution, and at this point, we have come up with an idea that we share the lanes so that we don't exclusively have a BRT lane, but that we would have it during off-peak hours exclusively BRT, and then during peak hours it would be open to bus rapid transit and all other traffic. So we're floating that with the local district now, District 4, and so we're still in those conversations, and we're hopeful that will, and it has to, at this point in time, it's a Tallahassee decision, so it's a central FDOT decision, and so we are truly hopeful that this shared lane scenario will be more palatable and that we'll be able to get that approved. What we did find, unfortunately, the Sunrunner, which was in Pinellas County, actually had exclusive lanes, was working and everything, and then it was recently shut down. And so the service is still running, but the exclusive lanes have been removed. And so that is, quite frankly, a risk that we might have. And so we're trying to make sure we go through every hoop that we need to keep those lanes open, because BRT does not work as well in mixed traffic. It just doesn't. A lot of transit doesn't work as well in mixed traffic as it can. It's not ideal. It's not optimized. Exclusive is where you want to be. Like that's on the spectrum, exclusive. And then on the other end is, mixed traffic is always a challenge. So we want to try to have some separation.
Okay.
And I believe your other questions, so we can give you a breakdown. I'll ask Gretchen to help me with that, getting that information to you. per project. And there was one more, I'm sorry.
The survey.
Oh, the
But they're not
surveys.
your- yeah.
Yes, I'm going to get Barney to help me with this
Calculating
one.
on demographics.
Madam Chair, the surveys that we took, they were, like I said, it was about 7,300, but it did collect data specific to age in there. The recommendations, and actually this information is contained in one of the technical documents, it told us who the typical profile of our typical rider. It also told us what they expected that to be. When we're talking about our current rider, our typical rider is a 25, between the ages of 25 to 49, employed black male. What they're expecting that to grow to in the future, though, is this paradigm shift toward the older populations. The recommendations that they made specific to community shuttle and some of the micro transit zones are meant to access those transportation or accessibility needs for them.
Okay,
But the demographic information was collected and used as part of the survey.
that's good. Okay.
And one of our fastest growing segments of our service mix is our TOPS program, which does cater to our senior population too.
Okay. All right, thank you. Go ahead, Shay.
Hi, Shay.
Hi there. So first off, I mean, I love the comprehensive plan, right? We want all this tied together. That's the goal, and that's what will make it effective. So I'm all for that. I want to talk about data a little bit as we go through this and how we're going to use what I'll say is I'd like to see more specific data. So a lot of the ideas and the detail were covered in the transit forward plan, right, by the type of infrastructure and the type of service. But just as an example, like if we look at this, the 19-year system total ridership, right, and there's a clear trend. I mean, around 2014, we start to go down. Everybody knows we kind of bottomed out the chart, if you will, around COVID times, and we've been building back. However, a couple things on this. You know, when I look at things like this as a financial person, a few things pop in. One is, you know, what is a unit, right? Because if you go back to 2007, the unit is probably different than it is now, meaning there's different modes of transportation that we have now that we didn't have before.
Yep.
So it's hard to compare something like this because this is, you know, I'll just make up that maybe it was largely bus ridership, and then you come forward all the way to 2025, we've got a different mix of options for people. So I think it's really important to know what we're tracking here. The other thing that I'll call out is that the Broward population has grown tremendously, right, in this amount of time. So if you were to overlay, you know, if this were a percentage of the population, I think that's what's really important, because part of what we're trying to combat here is everybody moved to Broward County, to Florida in general, and they all brought cars, right? So this is what we're really trying to address. And I think what's going to be really important here is this is a huge plan with a huge budget. And as we go through it, it's going to be really important to track where we're getting ridership and where people are buying into this and where they're not, and to pivot, right? Because, for example, if you look at the estimated cost summary, it's $1.4 billion. And
can you find that slide? So as he's talking, everybody else can kind of see.
the
I mean, we have it here, but
the huge chunk of it is there's $801 million and it just says capital, right? And so when I see that, I would be curious, you know, how much of that is buses, for example, right? And part of what I worry about is that we plan this, we have this great idea, and we don't pivot in time, and then we have, for example, way too many buses, right? Because we do have this informational issue or this reputational issue, or really it's more of a legacy issue where public transit just hasn't been as popular as we know it can be here. So we're kind of fighting against that. And I think your team and everyone here has done a fantastic job of starting to rebrand and re-envision this. So I want to give credit where credit is due. I just want to also recognize that at the end of the day, it comes down to the adoption. I mean, plain and simple, right? I don't want to spend all this money and then we didn't pivot somewhere where we need to. So I think the data as we go through this is going to need to get refined. And I'd like to see, as we're going through, how we're seeing the effectiveness and we're seeing the uptake and we're seeing the adoption and how that starts to play out, right, compared to the cost.
And I absolutely love the way you're thinking, and thank you for your feedback on that. And let me just address one thing. What I'm hearing is we need to have an off-ramp at some point, right? And with the data-based off-ramp. And then we need to look at what the data is telling us. I just want to get into a little bit of the capital investment because it is a big number, right? So the reality is that, yes, that is equipment based. That's a portion of that is the assets that we're going to need to move the 68% increase in ridership. But we have two facilities now. We have one facility at Ravenswood, and then we have another facility at Copens. And we, as you know, we are redeveloping the Copens site. But we also are going to need a third site. And I think that's been talked about to the Surtax board for the last couple of years. We're going to need a third site to accommodate the additional maintenance responsibilities we'll have with additional equipment and and to store those assets and to maintain them. And so and that's going to require property. So a large portion of that $800,000 is related to those two things. And so we can most certainly give you more data, as much data as you'd like to see. I think the question, Shay, that you asked us just now are definitely thought-provoking for sure, and something that I'd like to work on getting to you in a way that it's that's helpful.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be immediate. I mean, the other thing too, when I look at any projection in any financial statement, any financial document, there's always inputs, right? So, for example, when we say up to 68% estimated ridership growth, I would be curious what assumptions are in that, right? How are we coming up with that number, and how how aggressive are those estimates? What are they based on? Are they conservative? Are they a range? I have no idea. It's just a number. Mm-hmm. So I think that's really important because that's what we're hopeful happens, right? But it's very important to understand because that relates to the planning and ultimately the cost, right, of where we put the dollars.
I mean, if I could just piggyback on what you're saying, understanding the variables that could potentially impact what the estimates are, because we know that technology is changing in leaps and bounds in terms of how we move people from one place to the next. And we need to factor for that because it's changing, and also keeping in mind the demographics that we're serving, because that age variance really matters because this younger generation has a different mindset about how they utilize resource. They're more sensitive about the environment and so on and so forth. So all those variables need to be part of the calculus in helping us get an understanding of how these estimates are, evolving.
Right. Thank you. And I want to assure you that we are using modeling tools, established modeling tools to help us with identify this ridership growth. And we used our consulting team to identify that, but we can certainly get to you some of the inputs and those variables, and we use the STOPS model, right? So just, and I'll have Barney explain that a little bit more, but the STOPS model is, and I've talked about it here before with you, the STOPS model is basically the tool that the FTA, from a ridership perspective, endorse. It's not fair. You can use whatever model you want when it comes to your application, but you have higher success when you use the STOPS models in terms of getting funding for projects. So it is a well-established and respected industry tool that's used for ridership estimating. So I'm going to let Barney tell you a little bit more about it.
We can get you the specific inputs for that, but as to Corey's point, we wanted to be consistent with the process that we used to project ridership for Primo. So we went back and had the consultant develop a model for us and use those inputs. The STOPS model, simplified trips on project software, but it's the same model that's used used for the CIG projects for FTA. But we can get you the specific inputs for those models. But it's all based around standard industry practices. We didn't do anything through this effort that's not traditionally done for ridership projections, be it for fixed route bus service or CIG projects. Okay. Madam Chair, one thing though, you mentioned about tracking performance. As I mentioned earlier, COAs are generally done every 5 years. So although we have a plan now, we would refresh this or touch this again at the next point that we had a COA to make sure that we were moving in the right direction. And then one of the items that the consultant was tasked with specifically for our COA is that we asked them to develop a set of performance standards for us to measure that as we implemented these changes to make sure that we were getting a return on investment in terms of whether it was a worthwhile investment. But we'll be able to monitor that, be it quarterly, weekly, monthly at the point that the project is implemented.
Go ahead, Raymond. Is it you?
Hi, Ray.
Hey, Corey. Hey, everyone. Appreciate all the questions. And the presentation was fantastic, and I'm happy to see Transit Forward and COA here. Shay, I just want to throw some data. The question you were asking is maybe a number you could always recall back is if you look at the FTA transit cost per rider, Broward County Transit does a great job, and we hit like mid $6 per rider. So no matter what other mode share or service we use, if it's robo-taxis or aerial Lyft, vertiports that they're talking about now, we have to always remember that it costs $6 and it's $2 that someone pays to board the bus. So it's a $4 change. It's very hard to move anything for $4. So buses at this point are still just like an incredibly efficient, low-cost way to move people. And that's just kind of like the baseline of how I see this project. Some of the questions for you guys, I'm a little confused if this one slide that said something about funding, is this decoupled from the Primo plan? Or?
Yes. So we were intentional about that. This is the Primo plan is the foundation. I want to say foundation, as Barney mentioned in his presentation. Ray, we needed to use the Primo program as a baseline for the rest of it. So the assumption is that's in place, and then these other things support it or generate from it. As example, one of the tenements that we started with is no transit deserts, right? So that's where you'll see more of the microtransit being used in areas that A, it makes no sense to take a bus into, or B, that there's not enough ridership to warrant premium service. And then also in those areas, the goal is from a microtransit perspective is to have those vehicles feed into fixed route or Primo services, or within that geofence, within that that microtransit zone, you could travel. So you could go, if you're just going a mile away or 2 miles away from your home, you can use that microtransit service. If you're going a longer distance across county, we would feed you into the fixed or the Primo to get you to somewhere else.
So this program will need to get funding approved by the Board of County Commissioners. Is that my understanding?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
High frequency bus segment of the Transit Forward, I'm a little confused on the overlap of that. Is that going to be part of the Primo funding, the $125 million, or is that part of?
The Primo, as Corey mentioned, Primo is being funded independent of the Surtax plan. There are some costs associated with Primo specific to route extensions within the COA. When we did the Primo plan, the consultant at that time said, if you take any corridor, if you take Sample Road, case in point, the Primo plan may have recommended that a corridor go from, service be from point A to point B. That was covered within, as Corey mentioned, Primo. We went through the COA after, because it was done at a different time. The consultant working on the COA recommended instead of going from A to B, we feel based on projected growth of ridership, we need to go from B to C. So if we're talking about the A to B portion, that's what Corey mentioned, but the B to C portion is not covered within that cost because that service was recommended after the Primo plan had been completed.
Oh, okay, I'm a little confused, but just speaking, high frequency buses, right? So some of that is covered within the Primo funding that's already approved, and we're looking for additional high frequency funding?
Is for talking specifically about these recommendations that came forth for the COA, right? Again, because the Primo plan was completed and approved prior to the COA plan. So the monies that were accounted for the Primo plan, whatever that was budgeted, The difference of that delta is what you're seeing here in terms of for the recommendations for the Primo.
Okay, so
Those were not a part of that because, again, the efforts were completed at 2 different times. And again, it's not like they came back and said that the service did not make sense through the COA. They said, based on what we're seeing or based on our analysis now, we feel that there needs to be an extension on this route. They didn't change the corridors. They didn't change the shortening. There's some places on these specific routes, on these specific corridors, where they said we feel you get more ridership by extending this.
Okay. So we have our high-frequency buses already funded via Primo, and then this is an overlay of additional high-frequency service.
It's not an overlay, it's an extension. As I said, if you have a corridor, take Sample Road, take Hollywood. Sample Road is, say it's a 10-mile corridor. 5 miles may be covered for that within Primo rate because, again, that was what came out of the Primo plan. It's not an overlay, which you have an extension. It's not double dipping. There's no duplication of service. It's the same corridor.
Yeah, but I guess what I'm asking is like corridors like Dixie Highway and 441.
It's augmentation to funding that you have already seen for high-frequency bus. It's in addition to.
Okay. We'll talk later about that. I'm personally a little confused with the high-frequency bus funding aspect of it, because that's just so good. Like that's the bread and butter. It's the lowest cost part of the Primo plan, and it's drastically less than every single thing we're doing, and it has our highest return of riders. So I just want to make sure that that's kind of prioritized, because the last 10-year operating and capital program plan I saw has some of these high-frequency bus routes, like for Dixie, coming online in 2031. I imagine there's some level of like maintenance garage capacity issues that are limiting the rollout. But I think our staging should be, let's do the cheapest things first, high-frequency bus, continue building the rider instead of pushing it into the 2030s. So
when the COA was put together, it was put together so that it mirrored the Primo. When we implemented, it would be to support Primo. Now, if you recall, I mentioned earlier that generally, a lot of times when you have a COA done, you get route specifics that are independent. Because we told the consultant to use Primo and the Primo schedule for the development of COA, we got 3 separate packages of interdependent routes, which means you couldn't cherry pick this and this, because when you make these route changes, it starts to unravel. So what you see is what's recommended based on the implementation of the Primo projects and the network that needs to be in place to support it. If you pull some of these projects forwards, you end up with issues because you have frequencies that don't match, and you don't have the connectivity there. So what you see, I understand what you're saying, that on face value, it may appear that these are slam dunks, but it only works if you're talking about the integration of the whole system, and that's what the consultant was charged to do. Don't give us a one-off, give us a plan that's built on all of these things work together to feed into the Primo network.
Okay, I understand what you're saying. That the progressive overlay, it's like multiple ingredients make the cake kind of thing.
Understood. Okay.
Okay, and then Abhishek, maybe this is for you. The Broward Commuter Rail South on historic slides had $297 million as the price, but now it's $712 without the asterisk. So that means that's including the access fees and the bridge or something now, or?
So you're right. A few years ago, we did have $297 million as the total cost. And as I indicated, we just had a risk assessment that was performed with FTA and the PMOC. And so they recommended, given the totality of the risk and the evaluation of the project, they suggested that the project cost really should be $712 million. And that included a fairly significant amount of contingency in case those risks do bear out during the implementation. So that's why it was reflected as such.
Okay, so do you?
Can I help also? Yeah. Thank you. You did great on that. Let me just also stay, please. There's another factor too. So when it comes to the commuter rail project, 297 was based on kind of planning dollars. we're at about 30% engineering now. So now we've got more data, right? Those 297 did not include the access fee for us to be able to get on the tracks and to be able to use it. That's included, plus the contingencies and that the FTA asked us to add to the project because of some of the national trends. So it's a combination of all those things in totality added the additional cost.
Okay. Do you think maybe, I'll email you after, that you could give just a large bucket breakdown of that? Just kind of curious.
I'd be happy to bring it back to you if that's okay.
Yeah. No, it's no rush now. I know that's a lot of numbers. Yeah, well, just hopefully the contingencies, these things don't increase our other costs as we get to that 30% design phase. I guess that's where I'm like, ooh, WSP missed the mark by like quite a bit, like almost double. So does that mean everything else? So I'm just kind of thinking through the thoughts. I know you guys are already thinking of this probably.
We're all going to jump up on that one. We're all coming. So there is and I know you know this, right? So just in case other people don't know, there are recommended percentages depending on where you are in terms of project development, what percentage of risk or contingency that you add to the cost because of the unknowns. So when you're very, 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 very early in it, like when we were doing the system planning piece, we're at about 50%. When you've got 15% design, you're at 40%. And then as you go up, your contingencies decrease because you have more information about design. So hopefully we've got enough information now to see that diminish, right? That those contingencies start to reduce because we have more information and we can get closer to reality. We all know that at the end of the day, and I always say this to people, the project costs what it costs the day it's done.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
That's typically what happens is, you can budget and you can plan and you can have great engineering and great project oversight, and which we will do. But there's always this unknown thing sometimes that comes in there, and your costs are what your costs at the end of the project. Okay. But you're a lot closer to it when the design is done, the day the construction is bid, the project's bid, and then the last time is when it's done.
Okay.
Do you mind? Okay.
So I also want to clarify that the original $297 million is not WSP. Oh, I'm sorry, GAB and with Broward County Transit, PM for the Camino Real project. The original $297 million was the estimate that FDOT had came up with originally. It's a planning level order of magnitude cost estimate. Wasn't WSP. I just want to clarify.
Okay.
And also, originally, the completion date of the project was, earlier. And as we go through the process, understand how long it would take an FTA, in particular based on their national experience, they've recommended to extend the timeline of the project for its implementation. And with that, we had to escalate the cost to reflect the year of expenditure. So that's another factor that we had to consider when we increased the cost of the project.
Okay, that makes sense. Oh, can I?
Thank you.
No.
Did you have?
Yes. I'll try to be short.
Okay. Did you have another?
I'll do one more,
Oh,
and
okay.
I'll write up the other ones later. This plan so far is like very for Barney, very qualitative and not as like quantitative. I don't see as many like hard datas and stuff. Will that be getting released and published coming up?
Yes, they would. There were 3 technical memos produced that they used for a baseline. One was a market assessment analysis. One spoke of a propensity index, and was an existing conditions. But all 3 of those will be released.
Okay, and when do you think they'll be released?
It'll be within the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Oh,
It'll
okay.
be posted on our website.
All right, and then this is my last. This is just for my personal benefit. Tap to pay. I feel like maybe I spammed the COA.
I'm sorry, say it again.
The tap to pay on the buses. Do we have a timeline on that? I saw it as a thing. Are we going to do it in house or?
I think Corey.
Yeah,
Best
let
student.
me take that one. Thank you, Barney. So yes, okay, I'm an Apple payer, right? You know, tap your phone, tap your credit card. We all are used to that. Our point of sale isn't set up for that. And so one of the projects that we are bringing forward and hopefully will be funded is our replacement of our fare infrastructure.
Okay. And then I'm sorry, this is my very last one, I promise.
No, you had two last.
I know.
Excuse me.
Mr. Coleman.
This is just for Gretchen. If this is a big deal, as a transit rider, I promise, this is like...
Just get to it, please.
Okay. Let's just keep it respectful. Gretchen, is this something that we can leave a transmittal letter to the Broward Board of County Commissioners and say, this is something we want to keep seeing, this is something we think, if the board, of course, wants to support, if we can support it?
Yeah, if there's consensus from the board to add that to a transmittal letter, I don't see that there's any issue with that. Is there, Nathaniel?
Okay. I thank you for your guys' time and
right.
working on this project.
I have
Mr.
one
Coleman.
question and some comments. We've beat this page 45 and 46, this 1.4 billion. So my question is fairly simple. What percentage of that money is going to be surtax? Is it 100% or half, or just what do we think it's going to be?
Math real quick off the top of my head. The Oakland Park is 285. 285, 1.5 minus 285 puts us at about 1.2, right? 25% of that
25%
is
of the
surtax.
1.4 billion is going to be surtax. Okay, thank
yeah.
you. A comment. I'm
Oh,
glad to see
sorry.
Mr. Keller is back because he mentioned the three new projects, specifically the People Mover is, I believe, on site, and Erdal said we might want to move something faster. I would just encourage the staff to see if that's possible, because that's all on site, it's all in the airport. I don't know the issues, but I can tell you after dropping people off at the airport and picking people up, the, what do you call it? The congestion is incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, knowing that the connection between the seaport and the convention center are at least 7 years out. It says 7 in here, but I don't know. Has anyone given any thought to running our wonderful bus system back and forth so that these people that are going to the cruise port don't have to individually take a Uber or a taxi or something, because 7 more years of all those people moving back and forth. And I'm not talking a big bus because I don't want them to wait that long. But have you given any thought to taking buses back and forth so we could limit the congestion at the airport? It's terrible. I mean, you go in there and you can't even get to the first terminal. So I'm just asking if that's even a consideration. We have a lot of buses, but I would hope some type of small bus to where they pull up, people come out, 5 people, 10 people, get them open, get them out of the airport, instead of 5 vehicles picking up 5 different groups. That's just my comment.
Yeah, yes, sir. Mr. Coleman, that's definitely an option. And we have been asked this question, to be fair.
Yeah, I'm asking you to consider it because it's going to be 7 to 10 years probably before that's in there. So some way of eliminating, and I assume it's only Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right? It's not.
No,
the cruise
it's
is in and out Thursday through Sunday.
Well, do you want to help me with that? Yeah, my understanding is the cruise situation is all the time, especially during season, because they come in and out at different times. And to be fair, there has been a lot of conversation at the city level with the congestion in that area from the convention center, the port. My understanding is there's like 40 million trips a year that generate from the port, or going to the port or leaving the port. With the new hotel, the convention center, and the anticipated growth at the airport and the port, it is going to be, without the transit services that we're proposing, I think it'll be untenable at some point in time.
And I want to give a heads up to one of your TOPS drivers. I was out at the VA the other day, and if anyone's been there out on Commercial, you can never find a parking space, so I'm driving around. And the TOPS driver comes in, and I'm waiting on a car to back out. And the car starts to back out, the TOPS driver flies by, which irritated me a little bit, but that's okay. I'm going to give her accommodation for and through. The lady comes out, I go in, so I'm walking back to the office, and I see the TOPS driver has dropped their person off. And I go over and I say, "You work for the county?" "Oh, yeah." I said, "Well, did you see the person trying to back out?" He says, "Yes." I says, "Well, you really should have stopped, because number one, most of the people out here are fairly old." And she was so nice. She said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I should have." And instead of being offensive, she was somewhat apologetic, and Honey says, "You're right, I should have." And I just want to tell you, you don't see that very often. So I should have gotten her name or license number, but I didn't want her to think I was doing anything bad. So I just want to tell you, she understood and was very open about it. Congratulations.
Well, thank you, Mr. Coma, and also thank you for your service. Yeah.
All right, so
Madam
go ahead,
Chair,
Mr. Fraser.
I have one question. First, I'd like to thank you guys for a very, very comprehensive presentation. I think it was very good and understanding. I know that y'all deal with a lot of variables. So my question is, do you have a contingency plan that anticipate future changes in both the Fed and the state governments, and how it will affect your program, whether it's positive or negative?
So at the moment, we do not have a plan. I want to be completely transparent with you on that. We have identified it as a risk, but we don't have a plan. It's hard to kind of do that kind of plan, but let me take that back and see what we can do about that. There's so many, and you know this, right? So many moving parts. It's who's in office, who's not in office, what the mood of the day is. There's a lot of, when this group is in office, this happens. When that group is in office, that happens. And quite frankly, that's not always the case, and especially when it comes to transit. And this year, there's actually an increase in transit funding, and you might think that, given the political landscape in DC right now, that would not have happened, but that it did. And so let me just figure out if we can do something on that, because it's a good question.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? That's it. Well, thank you so much. And it really was a very comprehensive presentation. And I hope this model of just waiting until you're done with the presentation served you well. Because I think sometimes when there's a lot of interjection and talking, we miss some of the things that are really key that we need to pay attention to. So this way everybody's paying attention, taking their own notes so they can ask questions afterwards. So.
Well, thank you for that. And speaking for Barney McCoy, or speaking as Barney McCoy, I'm going to sign off. And thank you guys so much for your time.
Thank you all for your great work. Think next.
Oh, somebody left their glasses.
We have the Municipal Surtax program update. Are we doing that now, or we're just going to go ahead and jump to
I'm
Maribel?
going to ask if it's okay for us to jump to Maribel,
Sure,
since
no
she's
problem.
been waiting.
I know she also has some time constraints.
Good morning.
Good morning, Director Maribel.
Good morning, everyone. It is a pleasure to be back to speak to you about some of the updates related to our CVE participation as part of our Mobility Advancement Program projects. First, I would like to start presenting two of our new staff members that are part of the MAP team. We were able to fill a couple of vacancies we had. So Deanne Janet Childs and Juliana Beltran joined our team a few weeks ago. And fortunately, they were already part of the team. They were working temporarily with us previously, so they're very familiar with some of the work that we already do. And now they are part of our MAP team full-time. So basically, the last presentation we had, we spoke to you about some of the CVEs and the primes that were exceeding our CVE participation. We had almost 20 projects where the primes are not only meeting the CVE small business participation, but they're exceeding those goals. And today we wanted to share with you some of the projects that, these are the awarded projects. So here you can see that for all the awarded projects, we continue to exceed the average CVE goal. We're at 38% for our county projects, and we are at 40% for our municipal projects, and that's basically averaging 39%. But today we wanted to share with you our top 5 projects based on dollar amounts. We wanted to share with you the economic impact. We know that for this board, it's a priority to support our local small businesses and to create jobs. So we did the economic impact modeling for the top 3 projects that have been completed. And on this slide, you're able to see the number of jobs that have been created. We're talking about 92 jobs. We're talking about the total payment on these projects, almost $10 million. The total economic impact, and this includes the direct, indirect, and induced economic impact, we're talking about $15 million. And for these top 5 projects, the average attainment or commitment from these primes was 36% for the CVE goal, the small business participation, but it was exceeded, as you can see here, at 47%. So again, we want to continue to share with you the success stories associated with the projects that you are funding, and that not only this board, but also this is a partnership, it's truly a collaborative effort with the policy direction and recommendations from the board, the county commission, the cities, and the county agencies' commitment to ensure that our small businesses are being utilized as part of these projects. And here is an overview summary of the information that I just shared. Again, these are just the top 5 projects that have been completed, the number of jobs created, the total economic impact, and we continue to exceed. A total of 6 CVEs were utilized, and we continue to exceed the CVE attainment for these projects. And then we modeled all the projects that we did the economic impact for all the 125 projects that have been awarded. And here on this slide, you can see basically the millions of dollars that are projected to be awarded to our primes, the jobs that are projected to be created, over 3,400 jobs, the millions paid to our CVEs, 258 million. And in addition to that, additional job created. And again, this is the indirect and the induced benefits of all these projects. So when you look at the bottom line, we're talking about $980 million, over 5,000 jobs for the 125 projects that have been awarded. And along the lines of continuing to share the success of these projects, every week on our Business Assistance Weekly newsletter that is shared with our community, goes to over 30,000 subscribers. We share the success stories of these projects. And here you can see just a few examples of some of the projects, the millions that are going to our small businesses, and our prime contractors' commitment to supporting these projects. And again, these are municipal projects. We want to make sure that we are showcasing different projects, and in addition to that, county projects, the millions that are going to our local small businesses. We share this on our newsletters, we share this on social media, and we're working with our cities to make sure that they're also sharing this information. And this is our Business Assistance Weekly newsletter. We would love to subscribe all of you to our newsletter so you can see the information. You will receive it every Wednesday night with really important updates related to upcoming workshops. When we have Mobility Advancement Program workshops, we share the information there as well. Training to the cities related to our Mobility Advancement Program requirements, we also promote that information on our newsletter, and it goes to over 36,000 subscribers. And last week, we moved into a new business management system. This new business management system in the Office of Economic and Small Business Development is basically automating all our core functions. That includes our mobility advancement program, the compliance review of these programs. It includes the payment verifications. So the payment verification is now all automated. Before, it used to be a manual process. And as of Monday of last week, we went live. We did training with our municipalities in December, and we're working on those monthly utilization reports are now automated. And the system is integrated for county projects, is integrated with the county's financial system, which is PeopleSoft. And on the municipal side, the cities are reporting those payments, and then those are verified by the primes and the subs. So again, progress to date, we're getting some really good feedback from our certified small businesses on how much easier the system is as relates to the certification of small businesses and the renewal process. And on the monthly reporting, our primes and subs are learning the process as well, but it's now an automated process versus a manual process that we had before with a PDF form that they needed to complete monthly. So we're really looking forward to continue to engage with our, again, prime subs and the cities to implement additional efficiencies as part of this process. And this is going to help us provide additional reports in the future that's going to have up-to-date information. And now I would like to open it up for questions.
I have a couple, but if I could just go ahead and dive in. Always love hearing about the economic development impact of what we do with the Surtax dollars. Some of the things that I'm curious about, and you can bring up this slide. I'm particularly interested in understanding how our municipalities are doing by cities. Is there a way for us at some point to kind of get a sense of how much money is being spent by cities, which cities are effectively achieving, a 30% goal, for example, or, just so we can figure out ways to enhance their accomplishing those goals. That's something that I'm really interested in. So a report next time that perhaps shows how they're progressing would be helpful. And then, of course, I'm curious to know the types of businesses that are benefiting the most from Surtax contracting opportunities. Are we seeing printing companies, or maybe it's just mostly construction, IT? What types of companies are benefiting from that? And in the same breath, understanding the types of jobs that are being created. And I don't know how much your department is drilling down on that, because I know it's really business development focused, but I'm curious to know, because I work for Broward College and I manage our workforce development, and so at least a part of that, and so I'm always curious to know how do we direct those who may be seeking employment, how do we direct them to benefit from some of the economic benefits that are created as a result of these projects. So
Thank you. So yes, we will be able to provide a report for the next meeting, or when you would like to schedule us to present and provide the information related to basically the performance on the projects. Do you want completed projects? Okay, we'll do completed projects by city, so you can see that information as it relates to commitment of the goal versus the final attainment. We'll be able to provide the type of industries for all the completed projects as well. And then type of jobs, I'll get back with you. We'll see if, because we do the modeling, so that's basically a projection. They're not required to report to us the number of jobs or the type of jobs, but we should be able to provide some information to you as part of the modeling that we have been doing.
Just an assessment, just so we can better prepare our community to access these jobs.
Of course, and definitely the type of industries by project, we do have that information because that's what we use for the modeling, so we should be able to provide that as well.
Awesome.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Erdel.
Thank you, and thank you congratulations with everything you've been doing. Question I have: the direct impact of these projects, or whether it's employment or wages, by reporting. The indirect is done by a certain maybe multiplier model. Is that something you have it in-house or contracted outside?
No.
Vendor?
So we have in-house staff that is able to use Implant. That's the model that we used, Implant, to do the modeling. And we use the NACE codes. That's the North American Industry Classification System codes. It's used by federal agencies to basically designate business activity. So we use that information, and because we know for each project what percentage of the project is for different NACE code, we're able to enter that information, and we know the total cost of the project. We're able to enter that information into the Implant model and come up with the direct, indirect, and induce. So today you're having a modeling class here from the transportation presentation previously and us. We'll be glad to provide additional information related to exactly what that modeling entails, what the data inputs are, and how the information is used to enter into the model, and what the model outputs are if the board is interested.
Thank you.
Of course.
Mr. McElroy?
I kind of wanted to echo what Chairwoman Anthea said, of like, how do we take this now? You guys are doing a good job. We're hitting our small business requirements consistently. We see it every event. How do we go deeper? How do we like generate that ecosystem to get on the first rung of the ladder? How do we incorporate with Broward Community College, McFadder? How do we teach the people who don't already pour concrete? Maybe you go do an internship for a while, you pour concrete, and then next thing you know, you can have a small firm getting these county projects. Like what like that last piece, if you could just open up, or if you guys are working on anything.
Excellent questions, yes. And we're always trying to increase awareness and share the success, because our goal, we're being really selfish. We want to make sure that additional businesses are getting certified, right? In these industries that our Madam Chair just mentioned. We want to make sure that everybody knows it's not only transportation, because sometimes they think it's only transportation, but we have a lot of different industries that are participating in these projects. So we are using these success stories to recruit additional small businesses that can get certified, because we want to increase the pool of certified small businesses. The more certified small businesses I have, the higher goals I can assign to these projects. And you're talking about that workforce pipeline, which is so important. So we already worked as part of our economic development functions in the office with our Greater Fort Lauderdale Alliance and many workforce development partners to improve that pipeline from our high schools and the schools you just mentioned, and the universities and the colleges, to make sure that we're connecting our youth to those career pathways. So we are definitely combining the two, making sure that we are sharing these opportunities and working with our workforce development partners to increase the awareness of the opportunities.
Like I said, this is my favorite part. I really love hearing from your department, because it's about economic development, and this is a direct return on the investment that our community is making every time they spend a dollar. So thank you so much.
Thank you
for your awesome work. All right, so I know we may be getting to that point where people are saying, oh, it's probably time for a break, but I'd like to, oh, it is that time. It really is that time. All right, so we'll take the other two areas that we need to deal with after break. So enjoy lunch, everyone. Thank you. If we can just go ahead and resume our meeting and have our next presenter come forth. I don't know who.
Well, luckily for you, that's me.
That's you. Wonderful. Go ahead.
I have the pleasure of doing one slide, and then I get to turn it over to other folks to finish it up. So for those of you that received a briefing, I mentioned that we have received additional applications from the municipalities for their formula allocation from fiscal year 2026. And so there are additional funds that you see allocated here for rehabilitation and maintenance. There are 6 municipalities that have requested microtransit on-demand service. And then we do have 5 deferrals. Now, some of those are full deferrals and some of those are partial deferrals. So we just wanted to give you an update on that. We are getting close to being able to go under Surtax funding agreements. So for any municipalities that might be listening, we do expect to be working very soon. Yeah, I'm reading Nathaniel's lips, and he says today. So we'll hold you to that, Nathaniel. There are still some reviews that are ongoing. I did want to take the opportunity, again, for any municipalities that might be listening that did request microtransit. We have been reiterating that the requirements under the Third Amendment in order to receive Surtax funding for microtransit is to have the county named in the indemnification clause of the contract, as well as having a certificate of insurance that meets all of the requirements and names the county specifically. So those are some issues that we're just waiting to get updates from municipalities. There was a municipality that was actually 2 that were renegotiating their contracts with their service provider, so we're just waiting to get those. But it's going very well, at least from our perspective. I haven't heard from the cities anything else. We are trying to, obviously get these under agreement as quickly as possible and get that money out the door, and we'll be providing you updates on that as well. Nathaniel?
So one other thing, because of the timing, under the Third Amendment, the general practice was going to be that these are projects that should be able to be completed within 1 fiscal year. We are, at this point, since funds are about to be going out and we're already a quarter into the fiscal year, we will likely not be holding cities to finishing those projects in the truncated time frame. And it may wind up that we wind up tweaking the agreement a little bit, because there's always something that could happen on a road project, unforeseen conditions and whatnot. And the goal to be flexible with the cities, not to be so, finite in terms of when they have to have spent all the money and completed the projects. So again, it goes with the generalized theme from the Third Amendment, which was providing the cities more flexibility while they also have to take on more responsibility. So,
how did the 30 million get established again?
So that came from cost savings. And that's actually explicitly detailed in the Third Amendment exactly what the sources of those funds were and will be in the future.
So that number will change annually?
Yes,
number
it
one.
will fluctuate.
Number 2, what happens if right now you're at 26 of 30? So it looks like you're going to be able to take care of everyone this year, is that correct?
Well, every city is receiving allocations this year unless they've asked to defer receipt of their money so they can bank it for larger projects in an out year. I'm actually very happy with the fact that some cities are taking that long-term planning approach of, we could come up with something really small this year, but we'd rather do something really more significant, more impactful 2 years from now or next year. Please send us our money then.
So is their money based on their request, basically?
No, there was a determination utilizing a formula based on centerline miles located in each municipality. And then the funds that are available from cost savings in each cycle will wind up being divided between the cities that way. Although, again, to your other question, or the other aspect of your question, after 2032, we go to a much more formula-based system. So there's going to be a specific percentage each year of the total remittances that are being dedicated to the cities that will go for formula-based funding. So it should sort of even itself out during the
So is this over and above their, what I call their allocation? Or
no, this is part. This
is how they get their allocation.
This is a significant portion of their allocation, along with the grant match program as well.
And capital projects.
Yes.
So in that 10% minimum annual guarantee, there's community shuttle, there's municipal capital projects, R&M projects from this, microtransit from this, and the grant match program that Nathaniel just spoke to.
Do we have any idea which cities are getting the bulk of the dollars? And I know it changes from one year to the next. I'm just kind of curious. I want to make sure that we are keeping tabs on which cities are getting how much, so that the smaller cities aren't left behind, essentially. Because sometimes I think some of the smaller, underserved, where you have higher poverty levels, and the revenues perhaps from those cities are not as much, that the monies may not necessarily translate. And the needs are sometimes even higher.
We were specifically asked by the Collective City Managers Association because we provided different ways of doing the formula. And at the municipality's request, it was done via the FDOT centerline miles, which may change from year to year as cities add or have different roadway projects. But again, those historically excluded communities are receiving funds every year that do have the ability to have a meaningful rehabilitation and maintenance projects within their city. That is something that was a key goal from county administration. We made sure that we included it, and it is there.
Awesome.
And Madam Chair, we're going to, in a few minutes, we're going to look at city by city amounts of funding that they've received, because that's been a request that you've had. And I wanted to just mention, this is just a small portion of the overall municipal surtax program. So for some of those smaller underserved municipalities that you're mentioning, they may have a community shuttle program. They may get the vast majority of their surtax funding for community shuttle, and that's something that they really need and they want. So we'll talk through that a little bit more in the next presentation. But at this time, if I may, are there any more questions on this particular slide?
Anyone else?
Okay, I'm going to ask your finance manager, Kelton Harvey, to come forward and walk you through just the municipal surtax leverage.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Kelton Harvey, finance manager for the Transportation Surtax program. So the information that you are seeing is the municipal surtax leverage, which is the amount of non-surtax funding that municipalities are bringing in for their surtax projects. So as of September 30th, municipalities have contributed roughly $87.5 million in additional funding from municipal funds, as well as local, state, and federal grants. In total, that equates to an 85.7 leverage rate relative to the surtax funding invested in these projects. In other words, for every dollar of surtax, approximately 86 cents is being added from other funding sources. A significant portion of the total project funding comes from municipal, local, state, and federal participation, with municipalities using surtax funding as the foundational match that allows them to qualify for and attract additional state and federal dollars. So of the $87.5 million in leverage, 93% is from municipal funds, a little over 6% is from state and local funds, and a little over 1% is from federal funds. So this is demonstrating that the surtax funding is functioning as intended. So,
thank you so much, Kelton. I just wanted to add for the Oversight Board's edification that what is not captured in here is grant match program from 2026, which you are going to see in the next presentation. So this dollar amount at the bottom will increase because when Alex goes through the dashboard of financials, it will include the grant match program leverage from fiscal year 2026. Do
we have any questions? Anyone?
I have one, just out of the amount of money, just take Pompano at $34 million and Lighthouse Point at I guess 4,000 and change. Why is there such a difference between $34 million and $4,000? I mean, are the city's not asking for things? Or, I mean, just, it's a big difference.
It's a good question, and it's one of the reasons why the Third Amendment was so important. And as Nathaniel just pointed out, the argument that the county was hearing was that not every single city was seeing funding every single year, but they were participating in contributing to the revenues. So the Third Amendment assures that at least some portion of the 10% MAG goes to every single city, but that started in fiscal year 2026. So what you're looking at here is representative of the program for the 6 years that the cities were receiving surtax funding without the Third Amendment being effective. And what that means is it only represents projects that were awarded, recommended, reviewed, and awarded, either through the rehabilitation and maintenance process or through the municipal capital project process that was handled by the MPO under their surtax services agreement that ended December 31st of 2025. So what you're seeing here is representative of what cities both asked for and were recommended to receive using criteria that you all were presented. And so that's why there's that gap. I don't have any better explanation for it than that.
Is it fair to say that that gap will probably be less in the future based on the new system?
With respect to projects, it's hard to say because, again, these are projects, just so that you all understand, these are the universe of projects that the cities have that actually have other funding sources associated with them. This is not the full universe of projects. This is projects that have other non-surtax funding associated. So it's very much specific to the type of project, Mr. Coleman, because not every municipal project is going to be a good fit for a state or federal grant. And not every municipal project rises to the level that the city commission or the town's commission is willing to put their own money into it. So it's very much nuanced, and it is really about the project itself more than anything else.
All right, and also...
Wouldn't need also, sorry, go ahead, finish.
It doesn't include the county's funds that are spent in the city. We'll see that later, I hope, right?
Yeah, this is just the section of the presentation that's specifically focused. These two slides are specifically focused on the municipal surtax program.
I would think that need plays a role as well, because some of these cities that I see this larger investment are older cities in the county. Pompano, Hollywood, Dania, Fort Lauderdale, most of those cities are well-established cities that has been around for a long time. So the infrastructure has deteriorated over time a lot faster than some of the newer cities, is what I imagine. Could be part of the explanation. Anyone else? Okay. All right.
So now we're going to go to the after lunch portion of your program.
Okay.
And it's me again. So this is an opportunity for you all to talk to each other. You know, I hear you loud and clear, and certainly we had a nice, robust discussion at the December meeting about performance metrics. And we've been having discussions about performance metrics since February of 2019. And I want to assure you all that we are measuring a lot of things, but it doesn't necessarily mean that there are things that are meaningful to you. And so what we try to do periodically is bring you information and demonstrations, which will happen in a moment, about what are we measuring and why, and what would you like more of, what do you want more information about. Mr. Coleman asked for a lot of financials, which we're going to get into. I'm going to start with the programmatic. So you all asked the Office of the County Auditor to conduct a performance audit of the program. And they came to you several times to refine that scope. And they have an audit plan. I met with them yesterday at 4 p.m. to talk through what that audit plan, how it's evolving. So they've asked for a series of documents, and we've provided all of the information that they've requested. Public Works and Broward County Transit have also been asked for information, and that's in the document that you're looking at on these slides. You also have, just so you know, in your binder, you have a full matrix, like a giant spreadsheet. It's the same information, just in a different format. But for the people who are watching and participating, I just wanted to make sure that we were transparent and showing the same information that's in your binder on these slides. So the column on the left and the column in the middle were part of an agenda item that went to the Broward County Commission on October of 2018. It's at the top of your matrix, the exact date, and I will tell you. It was the 9th of October. And the County Commission took an action to adopt the Surtax program, both programmatically and financially. So there was a financial plan and there was a programmatic plan. And the exhibit that had all the program elements is what you're looking at here. Left column, middle column. So you've got a category to the left, you have various project types in the middle, and then what we promised over the 30-year time horizon of the Surtax. 7 years in are the actuals to the right. Now, I've been asked for additional information, much more specific, detailed information from the auditor, which I'm going to share with you today, includes every single project, project ID, project name, and the location. So I'm working through that with my team next week. And there's also some information that I'm going to have to ask for help from Public Works and Transit to respond to. But to just kind of go through this, and you can stop me if you want to talk about anything in particular, you can see that what we, as a county, promised in areas of road, bridge, resiliency, safety, connectivity, are very much aligned with what we talk about as our goals and our foundational elements of the program. So we have those 5 goals, we have the 3 foundational elements, and they are sourced from very much, other than the economic development and benefits goal, from this document, from that original plan. So in the area of resiliency, we have certain project types, bridges, mast arms. When you talk about safety and...
Can you go back one
Of course.
slide? You have 127,000 feet promised and 27,000, you got 127,500 done. Somewhere there's 100,000 feet that you did that weren't promised.
That's correct.
Correct?
Absolutely. We've far exceeded what we promised, yes.
You did that because when you dug it up, you found out it needed to be done, or what?
I can't say for sure. I think that, there's certainly an element of that in some instances. There are probably a lot of reasons for it. I think that significant flooding a few years ago probably is one of them.
I think, congratulations.
Could be federal dollars too.
Congratulations. Yes, it's very true that at least one of these projects did have state funding associated with it. So when you get to safety and connectivity, you can see we have school zones, which we bring to you every single year in both design and construction. We have bicycle lanes, greenways, things like multi-use paths that we've talked about. Also, the near miss program is captured here. So annual funding for innovative technologies and approaches that improve safety and improve connectivity is also captured in this area. And then you get to Broward County Transit and improving the transportation system. So increasing the bus fleet and frequency. We talked a lot about that this morning. There's some infrastructure improvements that were promised as part of the original program. You get to the rail, to Primo here. 26 miles of rail. It was very non-committal as to what type, for obvious reasons. transit centers, vehicle maintenance facilities. And then you get to the municipal surtax program, what the cities submitted. And based on their submittals to the county prior to the vote, we had a series of traffic congestion reduction improvements and enhancements. The cities also had projects that were focused on improving resiliency. Obviously, a lot of safety and connectivity projects in the municipalities as well. And then some various transportation-related improvements that prior to going to the voters, we believed were eligible. Some transportation system improvements. Some of these were associated with the existing community shuttle program. As you can see, there was a municipality that requested microtransit as part of the original plan. That is now something that is considered an eligible surtax project expense. Hey. And that's it, unless you all have some feedback, some questions, if you want to have a conversation about any specific items. Maybe if I show you all the funding associated with this, it might be helpful to give you the full context before we have a dialogue and take questions. I don't know, Madam Chair, if that's an approach that you would support.
I think that's a reasonable approach. I think more than anything else, I'm kind of interested in seeing a forecasting concept of where we are now and how, if we continue on this trajectory, where we would land in 2048. So, are we on top? Because certainly some of the projects were going to be a little bit more advanced, even exceeding goals, as we've seen. But there are some that there is a lag, and that lag could continue into, the 2040s. But what I want to make sure is that whatever we're doing now sets us up for our ultimate success end date, right? So I want to make sure that we are pacing ourselves appropriately as a board, that we are keeping our eyes on that, so that even if when all of us are retired from this board, that our legacy is not one that puts additional pressure on the next group to have to now achieve our goals, and that we're documenting the hurdles. What are the things that are preventing us from being where we should be? So just a timeline forecasting of where we are now, where we expect to be in the next 5 years, maybe at a 5-year increment. And I know it's not as simplistic as that, because so much of this is predicated on matching funding from whether state or federal grants, and even again, what the priorities are for these entities, whether state or federal. So all those factors need to be calculated. But I just want to make sure that we are ahead of it. It must never be said that the first group fumbled the ball and now we have to run twice as hard to make up for it. And then, of course, costs. With time, there are cost increments that we perhaps cannot account for due to inflation. So I think as much as we can get accomplished now ahead of the game, the better it is later on in terms of cost effectiveness is what I'm thinking.
Another way to look at that is if we're 7 years into 30, we're a little less than 25% into the dates. Those columns on the right, if they're below 25%, then we're behind. If they're ahead, we're ahead.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Same strategy I'm talking about, yes.
And that is the scope of the county auditor's work. So they're listening, they're paying attention. They know that I was providing you this information so that you could provide additional feedback on the scope, and you are. So thank you for that. And now I'd like to reintroduce for some of you, introduce for newer members, Mr. Mayorga, who's been on our team from almost the very inception. He joined in 2019. He's been serving you in a variety of different roles, and he's going to walk through a dashboard presentation for you now.
Thank you, Gretchen. Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members. It is a pleasure to be in front of you today. Thank you, Gretchen. And thank you, Roy. I find myself lucky following transit presentation in the morning because that's going to make my job a lot easier. And thank you, Gretchen, for introducing the project types, the original project types, because I'm going to talk about that too. And this presentation builds on a presentation that was delivered to you on the last meeting that included a lot of program information and a lot of project information. And at the time, it was requested to bring financials, and this is going to touch on financials as well as some project types and similar. I have to make a couple of disclaimers here based on the notes that we have in front of us. Sorry, I need to turn myself. Because we include information from 2019 to 2026 and what has been programmed for this year. A lot of the numbers we're going to see are going to include unaudited financials and estimations. Not only we have budgeted amounts in this presentation right here, but following we will have leverage information as well that is estimate. So please keep that in mind. It's the first time in all the presentations that we have brought you in which we are for projects that overlap multiple municipalities, which are quite a few, both from Broward County Transit and Public Works. It's the first time that we're averaging those projects. So we take the total cost or total budgeted amounts for these projects and we divide by the number of impacted municipalities as a way to provide some sort of weighting for this, right? Because in the past we had different methods and there's always trade-offs. There is never an exact science when we split projects, but this is just a different approximation so that the funding doesn't look so inflated at a municipal level, because one of the things that was asked is bring information at a municipal level. We didn't want to give the perception that the amount of funding for various cities is located in one city for this presentation. Also, the leverage is calculated and presented separately, so none of this is non-Surtax funding. All that we see here is Surtax funding. Like Gretchen mentioned before, this includes some of the changes that were brought by the Third Amendment, including the grant match program, and does not include yet, the rehabilitation and maintenance applications that we have received and microtransit applications that we have received. Yes, sir. Lastly, we have also quite a number of projects that have been bundled, and what that means is like, at least I speak for the municipalities which I'm more familiar with. There were cases in which a municipality had 2 or 3 or 4 projects and they were sharing the scope, general location, and for efficiencies and cost savings and other factors, they were bundled into a single project. So for municipalities, it's almost 24 projects. So all those are counted as one, because once we start talking about funding and these projects materialize and start going in contracts and stuff, it is only one project that we track. We lose to some degree the ability to maintain these things separate. So for practical matters, we count all those projects at once. So that is related to the bottom bar chart that we see that has the Surtax investment by number of projects. Yes, Gretchen.
I just wanted to clarify that there are bundled projects in the Public Works portfolio as well, and they've come to you. So when we talk about bundled projects, that also means that there were, in the original plan, when this goes back to the auditor asking what was in the original plan and what has happened to those projects and what has progressed and what's been canceled. When we look at status, we have to look at whether or not projects have been bundled for both city and county projects, just for clarification. What you're looking at here is city and county funding. It's all projects.
You mean by bundling? It's not multiple projects, it's multiple funding source?
No, it's multiple projects, Madam Chair. So, you know, when we bring you projects in August and they have an ID associated with them, and sometimes there are projects that are happening on the same road, but different project limits, but they're contiguous. And the delivering entity, whether it's a municipality or the county, says, oh, it'll be a lot easier if I were to roll these projects together, solicit it as one project. And so they started off as two, and they become one.
Got it.
Right. Thank you, Reggie. Let's see if I need something. So you will recognize these major project types on this area that I'm like hovering the mouse on. It is also in your spreadsheet that you have printed. These are the 4 major project types, and all those under the description area on your spreadsheet are these what the screen is calling categories. As we continue to make selections, you will see that some of these start filtering, and it's easier to like assess them individually. So my approach will be, I will go over each of these project types, maybe talk a little bit about the major contributors to each type by project type, and then I will do the same by municipality, and perhaps we can also find some way to correlate both, which is going to be more relevant for some distinct projects that are large in size. So again, one more thing. Once I make a selection, you will see that the universe becomes, like you see, the 100% resets. So now we're just talking about this category and the composition of that category, not to be confused with the distribution of the first overview.
Can you click on safety? I'm curious.
Yes, of course. And I will drill down into each of these. If you don't mind, I want to start in order, so we'll. Okay. That's fine. But I'll come back here and we'll talk about this one. So, sorry, traffic congestion. In here, you will see that the major contributors are naturally road expansion. These are very expensive projects. So you see like 50% of it is road expansion, and another big chunk is fiber. Then these are somewhat distributed along those things. But generally, at a municipal level, those that have road expansions, you will see that those are also a big part of it. And other smaller projects may be tiny, but fiber, adaptive signal control that are like normally distributed along the county and or across the county. And road expansion is going to be the major contributors to this category. And again, these are the descriptions in your spreadsheet, so you can have a look how much that contributes to the total funding. And this one is really interesting because I think it's very well distributed. This takes about 50% of the funding for improving resiliency, and the remaining is like distributed by mass arms and bridge rehabilitation. But drainage improvements, they have been all over the county. Like Gretchen said, there have been some emergencies, and both the county and municipalities have seen the need to increase a lot of investments on drainage. Oh, sorry, I think I have a selection here. I need to clear it. Here we go. Safety and connectivity. This is, for me, one of the most interesting ones because safety and connectivity could be sometimes competing, I would say. Like you will see that resurfacing as part of connectivity and perhaps to some extent safety for vehicular. But then we also see elements like bike lanes, sidewalk, safety improvements and traffic calming, which are like impacting multimodalities and all the ways that people used to travel. Namely, also complicity projects are very interesting. These are municipal projects, These are all municipal projects that include various elements for multiple ways of travel. A typical complete street project will include sidewalk improvements, drainage improvements, road resurfacing or reconstruction, some lighting, and ADA improvements and stuff like that. So when you look at safety and connectivity, you're really looking at multimodal travel. That's a way in which I will summarize it. Now, in here is when we start seeing a little bit of not a contradiction, but you will see a contrast between the number of projects, because you see most of the projects are school zone, but they're not most of the funding, because these are smaller projects, smaller in nature and easier to deliver, faster to deliver. And we will see some of that in public transportation as well. Here's another example. We have bus shelters and bus stops, although they're over 400 and almost 420, over 420 per. They're not the most expensive type of projects because of the way that transit allocates a project at a bus stop and a bus shelter level. And this does include also municipal projects and community shuttle, as you see. We have about 3 or 4 municipalities that, as part of their capital projects, they included bus shelter improvements. So those are also counted here. And the community shuttle program, which is serviced and is funded by Surtax, is also included for 20 municipalities. That's what that 20 over there means. Now, bigger contributor here will be probably rail and bus rapid transit system. We have also maintenance facilities. These are small in number, but they are large in impact and also in funding. So with that introduction to the types and the type of categories that comprise these higher level types, I will take some time and go and look at municipalities discretely. I don't see anybody asking anything, so I'll go ahead. Broward Municipal Services District, this is the county delivering these projects. When you look at safety and connectivity, again, sidewalk improvements there, lighting, bike lanes, drainage improvements. These are all county delivered, and let's see, Coconut Creek. Some municipalities, as you see this one, are kind of like well distributed. They have you can see like a very, I don't want to say equitable, but very balanced. Balance is a good word. The slices are about the same size, but we will see how the delivery of big projects starts skewing some of these slides. But I will take this opportunity to also talk about how those big projects that I mentioned in public transportation especially are going to affect how we're going to see these municipalities. And I want to bring your attention to cities like Coral Springs. Coral Springs has for 61% of the funding that they have is in safety and connectivity. They have very large sidewalk projects, and you will see also Miramar, and those cities on the southwest area are very heavy on reduction of congestion because they have large widening projects. But there are cities like Fort Lauderdale, and I want to, these are where those big primo and transportation projects are going to be delivered, that in what has been budgeted to date for safety and for congestion reduction, it may be comparable in amount of dollars to those cities, but when we see the slices are dwarfed by the amount of investment in public transportation. This is the same for Dania Beach, for example. It's another project that has rail. Hollywood, and I think Hallandale also has part of commuter rail here. So all to say that even though these slices look kind of small, it's only because this slice is just so big. And that's it's going to be a theme when we go over those 4 municipalities. This is another one that, because it's located in the southwest area, and I think there's a big county project of road expansion. Cooper City has a big chunk of reducing traffic congestion. And it has a large number of bus shelters, but I don't think that's going to be very impactful, bus shelters, like we said. Coral Springs, as I explained before, has a lot of funding on sidewalk and safety. I can recognize, for example, there's 2 municipal projects there that are together about $40 million, so it may be largely represented here. Dania Beach, in addition to being also impacted by those Primo projects and rail projects, has also a decent amount of drainage projects. 2 of the municipal capital projects that the city sponsor are precisely drainage. That's a big priority for them. We will see, continuing with the theme that I mentioned when I spoke about Miramar, those congestion management, or we call it reduced traffic congestion projects, are going to be present also in those southwest cities, like Cooper City, Davie, Miramar, and Weston. So we have Davie here. And needless to say, road expansion is 60% of the funding that they have. Deerfield Beach, I see that they have a big chunk of rail funding. We get back to Fort Lauderdale. I think, well, you can see the distribution there. They have sizable funding in almost every aspect of the main types of projects. And because of those large projects, the People Mover and Intermodal Center and all the rail and Primo projects that are programmed along Fort Lauderdale are going to, even when averaged, that $340 million are going to dwarf anything else. Same for Hallandale Beach. Hallandale Beach has a bigger slicer because of, I think, Community Rail South is here. Now, Hillsborough Beach, I believe that the only thing they have is community shuttle so far. So all you can see is 100% of it is transit service. City of Hollywood did have a big drainage project, but it was not mainly funded by Surtax. It had a low leverage. One of the big reasons for that is because it was an infrastructure project, and the Surtax amount only applied to the road surface, not really to utilities and other things that are not related to transportation. So even though it was a very large project, only $5 million of it was funded by Surtax, and they had like over $20 million funded by different other sources. We have Laurel Lakes, and a big chunk of it, I think, as you can see, it has rail on it. Oh, I think I make a rail. Oh, here. It's BRT, that's. Oh, this guy. Ah, there you go, you're correct. Rapid Transit is like really skewing all the other ones. Laurel by the Sea, similar to Hillsborough. So far, they have benefited mostly from community shuttle service. Sorry, communities. Yes, community shuttle, right. Laurel Hills has also a very strong community shuttle, and that is gonna. They apply to some projects, but they don't have a lot of municipal projects, and community shuttle becomes the major source of funding. This is another one that is kind of like well distributed when you look at the slices. I think they do have a complete street project on Sample Road that is represented here substantially. and so on. Margate. A lot of these projects are when it refers to traffic congestion are not only expansion but also fiber and adaptive signal control. I would bet, yeah, this is a fiber project and a nice chunk of adaptive signal control. Margate is not a place where we will typically expect to see a road expansion, but because fiber and adaptive signal also contribute to reducing congestion, they're also reflected there.
Excuse me a minute.
Yes, sir.
I need an explanation, first of all, what's in the four colors on the left. I can't even read what it is. There's got to be more than what the legend is. And I don't understand the legend at the bottom. I don't understand the graphics because I can't read that up there, and it wasn't in our book. So let's start with the four colors.
Right.
Tell me about what's yellow says and what's in it, because without understanding that, I can't even understand the graph. And then when you combine it with a legend, which you can't read, I don't understand it. I might be the only one.
It's okay. It's okay. Give me just 1 second. This is supposed to complement the programmatic information that I provided to you in the previous slides and in your handout. If you look at the handout, you'll see that there are four main categories that we're reporting to. So you have traffic congestion relief, right?
What? Okay, tell
congestion relief.
What
okay.
projects are under
inside
traffic?
Congestion relief, fiber, adaptive traffic signal control. Same thing as in your binder. So if you look at the way that it's structured in this document.
Yeah, but my point is, I just got that when I got here.
I know.
So,
okay.
But
it's in your presentation also.
That's the yellow.
So yellow is congestion management.
Okay.
Right, I can go over again. So these are like the four major groups and bigger groups in the spreadsheet that you have. And the first one being reduce traffic congestion. And the contributors to that project type are the categories on the bottom, which includes fiber optics, adaptive signal control, intersection improvements, roadway improvements, road expansion, and traffic signals.
So those relate to the yellow bubble.
That's right.
The green that's almost the green as either of the two had nothing to do with that. This is an explanation of the dollars in that.
Yes, sir. This is a breakdown.
So
Right.
just the legend on the side, I know we can't see it so clearly. It has a list of all the cities. Then you have the project type. And the project type starts with that yellow color. And then you have, under yellow, you have reduced traffic congestion. Then you have improved resiliency. Then you have improved safety and connectivity. So every time he uses the mouse to press on, say, yellow, it's giving you all of the different variables associated with reducing traffic congestion. Under traffic congestion, you have fiber optics, you have adaptive control, you have all these different variables that are a part of that. Is that okay?
That's correct.
Right. So that's what he's talking about. And so you can kind of see how each of these variables are functioning with respect to how much dollars were spent.
And then by tricking
and
on
you
the
can
city,
check by
you
city,
see-
right?
I
By check
couldn't
by
even-
city.
I don't know what's in the left column.
Right. It is hard to read. It is hard to read.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry for that, but
No, you're absolutely right to do so, and I can explain again. And so when I select a button from this area, like the chair was saying, reduce traffic congestion, and we see the breakdown by the type of projects that make up that project type, and I click on one of them, so you will see the roadway improvement project type contributes 10% or 39.9 million towards the overall reduced traffic congestion goal, let's say, or project type. So what I've been trying to do is highlight the major contributors to each of these project types. Like I mentioned, road expansion, you will see is a big chunk of what reducing traffic congestion means. Fiber and adaptive signal control are some of the biggest ones also. And when we speak about resiliency, drainage improvements, bridge rehabilitation, and mass arm conversion. So, and we spoke that drainage improvements was just over half of improving resiliency. Yes, sir.
So I can assume if you haven't highlighted a city, that's all the cities combined. If I touch the city, I would know exactly what's been spent in the city. I wish you would have told me that before you started, but that's okay. I now understand.
I can start over. and just to get a fresh look at it, when we speak about safety and connectivity, we talk about school zones, bike lanes, sidewalk improvements, the complete street projects that I mentioned before, which are municipal projects that have multimodal elements to them. And generally speaking, safety and connectivity relates to multimodality. It includes greenways and complete street lighting and stuff like that. So after getting familiarized with the project types and the type of projects within each type, then I'll go ahead and do the municipalities again. But transportation, like transit, we spoke about rail being the main contributor for all those big projects that were presented earlier today. By funding level, but you will see in the bottom, this shows the number of projects. By number of projects, we see that there's almost 420 shelters and bus stops that have been built in the past 6 years. We're good?
So this is your opportunity to ask specific types of questions if you want to drill down into the information. I know that it's difficult to see, and I apologize for that. We spent a lot of time trying to make it accessible and create an informational tool with the money that would correspond to the programmatic information that the county auditor's office asked for. Alex did this very quickly and using tools that aren't as flexible as we would like as far as being able to blow up font or change colors. But we're going to be bringing you the internal dashboard information that we've brought to you over the years later in the year. And one of the ways that we'd like to do it is perhaps to give you all access to tablets so that you can look at it, blow it up, if you want to. We can demonstrate it for you. We'll do it in a workshop setting so that whatever way you want to get the information, it works for you. But really, this is responsive to your request. And so we just want to make sure that you have the information that you need to do your jobs.
I think that information is great. I'm hoping that the cities are looking at it, because you might have to have a show and tell. I would suggest that you might want to, when you meet with the cities, this would be a good thing for them to understand, because I'm sorry, I'm fairly bright, but I was a little dense on this. I mean, it didn't help that I couldn't read it, but sorry. But I think it's great.
It is.
But it's a lot of information and understanding how to use it. Now that I understand it, it's even better than I thought it was.
Yes. It is an excellent tool and allows us to really kind of see in real time what's happening. My question, though, I kept thinking, which comes first? The allocation of funding or the project request? Like I was trying to figure out, how were the dollar amounts assigned for each of the four categories, whether you're talking reduced traffic congestion? Was that based on requests that came in from the various municipalities, and that's how the budget essentially evolved? I mean, I see all the variables related to reduced traffic congestion, for example, but I don't know that we we ever had a chance to say, well, we want to assign 2 million to X and so on and so forth. It really came as a result of requests that we got from cities, correct? Or maybe some assessment that was done internally.
It's actually county and municipal projects. Because remember, the municipal surtax program is just a small portion of the overall surtax.
Right.
So when you get your August budget workshop and regular meeting materials, you see everything that's being requested, every proposed project and proposed expenditure, either in the county, in the agencies that participate in the surtax program because they're eligible to, and the municipalities. To your question, Madam Chair, everything that's here is related to what has been requested and recommended to the county commission in their budget. And up until this fiscal year 2026, cities were requesting projects based on what they believe they needed. They prioritized their projects and then they requested what they needed or what they wanted. Same thing with the county. We track at your request and at the auditor. I'm so glad because the auditor wants it too. We track what was in the original plan. We want to be able to tell you and the public and our commissioners and all the stakeholders that we are doing what we said we were going to do. So we know what we had in the original surtax plan from 2018. That's kind of what this is about. That's what this exercise is about. And then what we're trying to show you is how much money has gone to each of those categories and what types of projects build those categories. But how they come is either A, they were in the original plan, or B, a city or the county identified it as a need and it was in the county administrator's recommended budget.
Perfect. Good. I just wanted to remember how some of that evolved. I know a lot of these were projects that we approved and or nodded and said it was a good plan, but I was just trying to remember which came first and I couldn't. So,
Madam Chair.
Go ahead. Sorry.
A question about the rail funding, and I don't remember. It shows up in several cities. It's just an example. It could be bus rapid transit. Did the cities request that funding, or like how does that? I don't understand how the graphic works.
So what you're seeing is county and city funding and projects, and so the BCT Primo, as Alex was explaining, anything that's in the Primo plan that touches one of these cities ends up with an allocation based on the total cost of that particular corridor allocated across however many municipalities would be impacted by it. So this is the first time we've ever done that for you, trying to average and then allocate based on estimated costs.
I think it's important to add that everything the county builds and plans for, necessarily, it impacts cities, right? So when I select a city, it doesn't mean necessarily that the city requested it, but that the investment is occurring in the city, being because the county decided that way or because the city requested, because it includes both municipal and county projects, is both. So to answer, to complement the rail question, it may include community shuttle that the city works with BCT, and it may also include BCT only type of projects in that city.
Thanks, Alex. This is really useful. I feel like it shows a lot of information. I know Power BI can be a struggle and feels like it's got you handcuffed sometimes. I think something that may be useful is if we code all the Primo projects, and maybe there's a way to make a clone so we could look at one with all Primo removed, so it's not oversaturating the graphs. Maybe it's just a clone, or maybe there's a toggle to code them out. I think this is a really good framework to build off of. I think it would be useful to break the project types down a little bit more. I would probably like to see safety and connectivity separated out. I would have to take a greater look at like what level and how much nesting would want to be done to get a good picture. But I think this is really useful. I would like to see it too, I know this is when it gets more complicated, but the number of projects by category, if we can toggle that too and do it, organize it by spend and stuff like that.
Right.
That's just for the Power BI section. In terms of questions for the metrics section, so I think you clarified this, and I guess I'll look it up. So the promise of the 2019, that's what you're referencing came from a county agenda? Is that what it was?
Yes.
It was, right?
Through the
Okay.
chair, yes. So on October 9th of 2018, prior to the vote, so not 2019, 2018, the county commission took action to approve the Surtax financial and programmatic plan so that there would be a record of what the Broward County Commission was promising to the voters. And that's what we're being held to report on to the auditor. So what was in the plan? What did we promise? How much money associated with the various project types? And then just for everyone, the Office of the County Auditor is going to come back to you all and say, and to county administration and to the commission and say, they're on target, they're not on target, we have findings, we think there are opportunities for improvement in these particular areas based on what that original commission agenda included.
Okay. So I don't know. I would have to look at that source document to kind of get a better understanding for the metrics. But one metric I would always love to see is the sidewalk improvement projects broken down by protected and not protected. But if the source document doesn't dictate that, then whatever, maybe we evaluate that in the future, or the commission does. For a personal metric as an oversight, I still would like to see fatality data constantly updated. I know it's not something we're going to put on the GSI map, but pedestrian and bicycle fatality, I will say at every meeting, it should always be our North Star. I know it's a hard number to internalize because it adds layers, but
I want to be clear that it's not that it's hard or that it adds layers. That's not why we don't do it. We don't do it because the surtax is just a funding source, and the vast majority of bicycle and pedestrian fatalities are occurring on roads that were built before the surtax even existed and have nothing to do with the surtax program. That's why we don't report on it, because what we're trying to bring you as metrics are things over which the surtax has influence, impact, or control. And people dying on the roads or being severely injured is not something that this board and that this program was specifically focused on. Now, when we get to the safety and connectivity, those projects that have surtax funding, absolutely. We want to make sure that after we do those improvements, safety improves. That's a metric that we're going to bring to you because we can own that, because we had some influence over it. But do you understand why we don't do just in general?
So I understand why, but if we don't, and we're the oversight board with the biggest amount of funds, if we're not looking at transportation deaths, I'm not sure who in the county is. So who is? Who's owning that data? Because that's important data to own.
Well, the state owns it for roads that are under its jurisdiction, and the county owns it for roads that are under its jurisdiction, regardless of how they're funded, right? So again, if the surtax is funding a project that's related to safety on a road, then we're happy to bring you information about how safety improves or changes after that. That's fair. But with respect to all of the roads and bridges and sidewalks and bike lanes that have been funded with non-surtax funding, it's just not within your purview.
Okay, well, if it's not within our purview, it's not. I guess, yeah, maybe I'll reach out to the, I don't know. I mean, it's a really tough one for me to digest. It is the defining metric of the ballot language, improving safety and connectivity. And the metric of seeing pedestrian fatalities decrease and bicycle fatalities decrease shows a correlation that the dollar spent had the outcomes that we intended. So then why wouldn't we track it?
We are
overall?
happy to do it for the projects that are funded with the surtax. That's what I just said. And we will, and we do, and that is absolutely fair. If the surtax is paying for it, you oversee it, and you can ask for that. But if the surtax didn't pay for it, we don't want to own it.
But so then this is the chicken or egg, because let's say Broward Boulevard gets redeveloped with the Broward Safety Action Plan, it needs county dollars. But if those county dollars and the surtax dollars don't get used for it, then that means we're not owning the fatality data until our project's on it.
Madam Chair, I'm just going to say that if it's on a state road, the surtax isn't, Broward Boulevard is a state road.
So
no,
I think,
of course,
I think
it's Broward Boulevard.
You may be conflating two different things, right? So we have our responsibilities and jurisdiction, if you will, over projects related to surtax dollars. If you're saying to us that you have an interest in understanding the fatality rate in the county in general, whether it's state dollar streets or federal dollar streets, dollars from federal or state paid for these streets, you just want to know this information in general, and you think that this is something that we should pay attention to, that's okay. I mean, everyone in the county should pay attention to who is being killed on our streets, whether it's through cars or whatever reason. We all should pay attention to that and bring some level of empathy and advocacy to that. So that's a separate issue, and certainly there must be somebody in the county or at the state that is capturing that information and can share it with us. Whether or not we'll have any ability to change it using any of the surtax dollars is another story. If you want us to be a voice of advocacy on behalf of people being killed in the streets, but it's not just, is it just because they're driving a car, or is it because they've been gunned down? I mean, people are dying in our streets all over the nation. I mean, where do you draw the line?
So
is what I'm trying to
what
understand.
I'm talking about is not like violence of guns. It's strictly, I know how to find this data. The data is updated. The state maintains it. The county maintains it. There's people that track this data. I'm saying when we get review ourselves in the future, this data is important, because if we don't decrease it, and it was in the ballot language of safety, it's equivalent of not fixing congestion. If we have more congestion in the future, then that part of the ballot language failed. So it just seems like a measurable metric to me. We have ownership of it in a sense, because if you understand, like, pedestrian and bicycle fatalities happen for multiple reasons, but mainly it's infrastructure based. When the infrastructure allows too many cars to speed, etc., it creates unsafe environments that increase the collision risk with the pedestrian, bicycle, car on car. The decisions, the projects that are coming through the pipeline throughout the year, I would like to see that there's a metric fixing that. I mean, I don't.
But we are not dictating, we don't dictate the projects that get approved. They
Nope.
come to us and we review them. And at that time, it is our prerogative to maybe identify maybe some gaps that could create safety issues. And at that point, be an advocate for safeguards being implemented to make sure that that strip of road that we're assigning surtax dollars to have all the safety measures in place. And hopefully over time, those smaller projects will amount to a larger component of us improving safety in the county. But to pay, it's almost difficult for us to pay attention to road safety across the entire spectrum when we don't have purview over all of every road that's built or has ever been built in the county. So we're measuring something and getting data that is inconsistent to our jurisdiction. We don't have the full reign of everything.
Is not saying, no, I'm not saying the surtax, the deaths that are occurring right now are not the surtax's fault, and they won't be the fault of the surtax in the future. It's just to guide how the money flows. And I think there's a philosophical debate about what the surtax is actually supposed to do, but the ballot language said safety.
Right.
So
And
that
we're
should
paying
be
attention
one
to
of our-
safety on
but-
every project that comes before us.
So, which if we are, but that's if the projects are coming before us. But if the county is not funding the Broward Boulevard safety improvements, although it is a state road, the county can contribute funds to improve the safety of it. If they're not, then that shows you that it's the chicken and egg. We're only tracking what we fix.
But that's the range of our jurisdiction,
But it,
essentially.
no,
Listen, Raven.
So let me offer this.
Okay.
We're going to be making a presentation to the MPO next Thursday on the low stress multimodal mobility master plan. And that's funded with the surtax, partially funded with the surtax. It's also funded with gas tax. It's come before you several times. It's been ongoing for a couple of years now. And part of what I'm hearing you say, because when we say safety in the ballot, we don't say bike and pedestrian safety. It's just safety, right? There's no clarity around safety of what, safety of bridges, safety of what. The low stress multimodal master plan, which is kind of to me, it is foundational to this program. It's setting the vision for the next 20 years of bicycle and pedestrian improvements that are not going to just be funded with the surtax, because there's not ever going to be enough money in the surtax to fund all of those hundreds of projects. We are going to be making that presentation. We're going to bring you a presentation in April, and we're going to talk to you about baseline data, and we're going to talk to you about metrics, and we want to get your input and your feedback. And listen, I want this to work for everyone on the board, and I want this data to be meaningful and measurable and impactful. And I'm just sharing with you why we haven't provided you this data on bicycle and pedestrian fatalities previously. If it's the will of the board for us to do it moving forward, we're happy to do that. I'm just sharing with you what the reasoning has been for not doing it. And when it comes to projects that are in that low stress master plan, we'll be tracking them, and we'll be happy to bring you back periodic updates on that too over the next 20 years. So I can offer you that right away.
yeah, that's fair. If the board wants it and the board wants to see this data because they think it's an important metric to measure a real measurement of like what happens in this room and all the rooms and the funding sources and the construction, real tangible results will be a safer Broward County.
So,
and I think that's within.
yeah, when we think safety, though, it cannot just be that we're talking about pedestrian safety and so on, because it's safety across the board. There are some of our streets where they're poorly lit, and crime is happening every day because they're poorly lit. I mean, where do we draw the line on?
Not violent crime. That is not, the 100% is not the purview of this board. I get that. I'm talking about strictly fatalities that happen within our transportation infrastructure, people crossing crosswalks where there was no crosswalks, people getting hit on high-speed roads where people have multiple times complained that this road shouldn't be high-speed, someone getting hit in Fort Lauderdale on Andrew Avenue of the Arts Bridge twice in a row because there's no protected bike lane. I'm like, at a certain point, we should have that feedback system. That's just how I think.
All right, and we've had that in the past. We've had some presentation annually about safety on the roads, just so we get a sense of the safety issues. But again, we don't bring the projects to us. So, maybe part of the advocacy across municipalities is if you are aware of roads that have dangers, this is the hotline to notify us so we can pay closer attention when we have projects coming to us. There's a heightened sense of awareness that on Commercial Boulevard at the corner of such and such, even though there may not be penny tax dollars assigned there, it might be something for us to look at to improve the safety. So, but again, hopefully the cities and the county can come together on how they fund it, right? So, but certainly hotline perhaps, or some measure of building awareness so we can be an advocate in that regard.
Gretchen, refresh my memory. Didn't we have a presentation from a group that's studying safety with whether it's cars. We're looking at that, obviously, but we're just looking at it on areas that we can say something about, correct?
So that's really where I was going with this, is we have a near miss study, and it's looking at, obviously, near misses between vehicles to pedestrians, bicycles to, pedestrians, but it's limited in its scope. And so we can provide you with really good, clean data because it's our project and we have the baseline and we know exactly what was changed. And they did a presentation to you to say, okay, we did all the signage improvements and here's how it improved safety. But it's, it's limited in scope. It's that one area that we paid for. We can talk about this, obviously more when we bring you additional metrics and when we talk about the low stress multimodal master plan. But for the purposes of right now, is this helpful? Is this what you all are looking for? Just so that I can let Alex sit down. Is this the type of data and in the manner that you were hoping to receive it?
I would say yes, absolutely. And of course we know that with time things evolve, certainly, right? Because even when we talk about the safety issue, we may be talking about pedestrian, but you're going to have another faction in the community saying these roads are not lit well, and as a result, someone got hit, and so we have to figure out how do we tackle that when surtax dollars doesn't necessarily speak to the lighting piece or whatever the challenge.
It's part of this. There is a street lighting component actually because of that exact reason. It is a safety issue and it's part of the safety and connectivity bucket.
Erdal?
Sometimes difficult to hear, from the speakers. Just wanted to clarify. This is the most complete data information measuring, we have had so far, at least I can speak, for myself. And it includes the entire Surtax program from beginning till, recently, and by policy areas and also by municipalities, the entire Broward County. Is this going to be available on the website? Just wanted to,
because there's unaudited financial data associated with it. It gets real sensitive. I need to talk to some other folks inside the county before I could promise that. But that's something that we're trying to work towards. Right now, this is all internal, and it's something that we share with you during your meetings. We don't make it publicly available, but our goal eventually, and we have been working really, really hard. I'd just like to give a shout out to so many members of my team that I'm looking at. Thank you for the work that they're doing to try to get to a place where everyone in this organization can be comfortable with the financial data so that we can share it more publicly. Right now, most of what we provide is at a planning level. It's at the budget level. It's cost estimates. And we don't really get into the actuals, but we know as this program is evolving that that's something that we're going to absolutely have to do. It's a reasonable request of our stakeholders and the public that they see budget versus actuals on the website. Yes.
But I think it really, helps us to, when we're asked question, inquired, why is the city's not getting that much, money or in proportion to the total, and this could be quite helpful. Just all you need to do is just click on the municipality, and it shows different kind of the projects and priorities and so forth. And it doesn't have to be as detailed for public consumption, but that could be our goal maybe down the road. But it is very comprehensive. Thank you.
I love it. Excellent job. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. And thank you. And you're correct. Some of the questions that the report intends to answer is how much Surtax funding goes to each city, right? And how that funding distributes among these priorities. And within these priorities, break it down by category, by number of projects. It is challenging to present in one format, but at the same time, had it been, let's say, a printed version of it in a table, you may lose the ability to drill in and look at something, if there's something that really interests you to know. Like Gretchen was saying, something like this gives you that opportunity to, you were interested in Broward Municipal Services District sidewalk projects. We can do that. We can show you the proportion of these type of projects in that locality, as well as the number of projects and how it relates to other projects in the same jurisdiction, for example. So that was the intent. Right? Should I go with the leverage, I think? Okay. I think, Roy, can you take over?
Thank you. So I just want to piggyback on some of what Raymond said regarding the safety thing. It's still kind of in my head. And I'm just wondering whether or not we could establish a hotline that if folks wanted to call in, I don't know if that would help at all. If there's an intersection in the neighborhood and that, it's a way for people to report on roads or areas in their city that may be having some safety challenges. And then, every quarter or so, we can just kind of see what's going on from various cities, what the location, have some requirements around what they need to tell us. It's the address, time of day, perhaps, that there are more accidents happening there than usual, just so we can get some real-time data on that, if that helps. And then at some point, we can look at it. And if nothing else, even if we cannot, I know dollars may not necessarily be assigned to it, because if the cities aren't asking for it and the county funding is not assigned to it, nothing may happen, but at least we can be a part of the advocacy for improving safety in that particular area, right? So that's my suggestion. Okay. All right. And I think we are done with all the business of today. Regular agenda. Okay, good. All right, with that, I'd like to move into our regular agenda and ask for a motion to approve the minutes of December 12th. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Any second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. All right, thank you. Let the record reflect our minutes was approved. And now I just want to ask if there are any reports from General Counsel, any comments, board coordinator, and of course members of the board. Anything you'd like to report for the good of the cause? Starting with you.
No, thank you.
No, nothing.
I do. I would like to just encourage all of you to reach out to anyone through professional or personal avenues to encourage folks to apply for the vacancy if they are eligible to do so. We have a vacancy on this board left by Mr. Hooper in the category of engineering/construction management. You all are very familiar with the ethics limitations associated with serving, but if you know someone who might meet them and might be interested, please ask them to apply. We have our appointing authority meeting to appoint an individual on April 1st, so time is short. Madam Chair, if I could just for a moment see if I have everything for your April meeting. It's going to be a very packed meeting. It's going to be a full day unless the chair tells me to take something off of this agenda. So right now I have a low stress multimodal master plan update, including conversation about bike ped fatality data and metrics for the implementation of that 20-year program. We have a Broward Next land use plan update on the transportation element. This is a continuation of a conversation from the Planning Council. The bicycle and pedestrian facilities data visualizations that you all have asked for. This is looking at bike and ped projects that have been completed using Surtax dollars. At your request, you wanted to see exactly what type of projects, what the elements of those projects were, protected, non-protected, painted, not painted, and then also how are they connecting on either side of the project limits to other facilities. We've been working very closely with the innovation team to try to come up with a visualization format so that you can let us know if it's meeting your needs. Hopefully we'll have that ready for you in April. Tri-Rail County Regional Collaborative Update, if we have one. Obviously our Surtax Fund independent financial audit will occur in April, as it always does. Legislative session update, OESBD, and the requests for information. I talked to Maribel as she was going out. So the city by city, types of jobs, types of industries, and some overview of how the in-plan model inputs and outputs are actually created. We will have an update on our metrics, part 2. Sheridan Street Capacity Expansion Project led by our Highway Construction and Engineering Division. And as you know, there are possibility that we will have public comment from residents. And it's been a long time, but FDOT has asked if they could provide a TSM&O, that's the Traffic System Management and Master Plan presentation. So an update to that. So a lot. Anything that I missed?
I hope not. Sounds like a long day. All right, so one by one. Phil, do you have anything? No? Raymond? No. Doug?
Yes, I got 2 things. Gretchen, on the municipal surtax chart, I would hope that when we build this chart, we do one for the county and show it by cities, because I think it distorts the amount of money that's being spent, surtax, because I obviously live in Fort Lauderdale, so and the other thing is, these surtax briefings, I was under the impression from the very first day that we were obligated to do those. I understand that may or may not be the case, but I would encourage all of us, if you're not taking advantage of the surtax briefing, you're certainly wasting some of our time, public and everyone else. Those briefings will answer some of the questions that are brought up. So I thought it was mandatory. I
did too.
I wish it was, and I wish if this board could do something about it. For sure, it's not fair to anyone.
Just joking.
Again, the briefings are Mr. Coleman, the briefings are not mandatory. They certainly are encouraged, especially when we have, that April agenda sounds daunting. And I think that in particular for that one, briefings are going to be pretty in-depth. But again, they're offered to all board members as a courtesy, and we would certainly encourage everyone to take advantage of them.
Are we tracking who's attending the briefings and who's not? Yeah. Because I think if someone is habitually not attending briefings, that is something that should be addressed. And it's not to say, I have conversations during the briefings, and I will say sometimes in the moment that this is something I plan on bringing up at the meeting here, because some questions that are asked in the briefing still requires us to make a statement while we're here publicly, so our folks who are tuning in understand that we have a sensitivity about this and that it's a question that needs to be answered publicly. So because you have a briefing privately with legal and with Gretchen, it doesn't mean that you can't bring it up. But what having the briefing does is eliminate a redundancy of questioning or a lack of knowledge that you may not understand something, but it can be clarified in that moment. And so you're not wasting everybody's time asking a question that perhaps in previous meetings had been answered, and so on and so forth. So for the sake of efficiency, because, we're spending hours here, right? And also I think when you attend a briefing and you understand it, you can express yourself and ask appropriate questions that is not confusing the public as well. Because I think sometimes some of this questioning back and forth just confuses the way the presentations are made. This is why this morning I asked that we hold off on the questioning, because when we're interjecting all the time, it interrupts the flow of information coming to us and coming to the public. So it's really important that if you are a member of this board, that you are attending those briefings, so you can become more informed about what we're discussing here, and be better prepared to address this. It's a responsibility, and I know it's time consuming, but it shouldn't be a habit that you miss the briefings.
A good example of that, was that chart that was presented, it wasn't in our packet that I got, email or otherwise, right? The dashboard about all those. Because so obviously
the dashboard can't be part of your presentation because it's a live, interactive, Power BI based tool.
There's an example. If I had seen even one of them, I would have been able to understand. I wouldn't in this case, but
that's on me.
Well, but I'm saying
I'm not smart enough
important.
To be able to navigate it like Alex is.
I want to second everything our chair said.
Thank you. Any other comments around that? Go ahead. Anything? Nobody else? Okay.
One more thing, for all of you who have terms that are expiring, in your binder, you'll find a letter that's been prepared to make your life easier. If you fill it out and you leave it with me today, you don't have to do anything further except perhaps update your resume if you need to. Thank you so much, Roy, for your help with this. I did want to let you all know that I did meet with the chair of the appointing authority. These letters and your accompanying resume will act as the packet that the appointing authority will act on for your reappointment if you're interested in continuing to serve when they meet on April 1st. So I do need you to provide this to me so that they can act on your reappointment. And of course, Nathaniel's team can opine on whether or not you are eligible to continue serving. The only other thing I would ask is that you leave your old badges. If you received new badges today, if you will leave them on the table, that would be fantastic.
Go ahead.
Do we have a briefing from council today or not?
I had nothing to add to the conversation.
I think he's asking for an update on the ethics training.
Oh, the ethics.
So, yes. In your briefings for the April meeting, there'll be a customized 5 to 10 minute ethics discussion associated with, I guess, there's no legal requirement for annual ethics training for this board. Just like there is no annual cybersecurity training that is further required of this board. But it is obviously best practice to do a refresher on some of the issues relating to ethics, gift law, public records, which I'll be doing in your individual briefings in advance of the April meeting.
We're not doing that today.
Oh, no.
Oh, thank you.
Question though, there in Tallahassee last year, there was a lot of talk about the ethics, the form, about changes to who reports and what has to be reported. Did anything change last legislative session that we need to account for our financials?
Not for the members of this board. So you're continuing to complete the financial disclosure. Form 1 in terms of your disclosures as you have in the past. If anything changes this session that may go into effect for July, I'll be absolutely letting you all know. If it's in between meetings, you'll still find out from me so that you can make your appropriate disclosures.
All right, and we're doing good time. It's like 2:17, so we're doing good. But I just wanted to close by, again, first thanking my colleagues at the table, board members for your service. I know this is taking time out of your work schedules or just your personal life. The fact that you choose to be here when we have these meetings, and spend time even before you come to the meetings preparing is really appreciated by me, and I'm sure by so many of our residents in Broward County. So I want to thank you for that. I also want to thank our staff that support the work that we do here. I know putting these meetings together is never an easy deal, and it seemed like every time either you or our staff presenters come before us, we're asking more and more and more. And I don't want the county to come to a screeching halt because folks on this board is just constantly layering on work that may not necessarily translate in real-time impact. So, I think push back when you need to, if it becomes overbearing. I think we need to be realistic about how we move forward in this work, because there needs to be a dedication to fiscal responsibility and how we spend our time and the resources that has been entrusted to us. I think that our presenters every time come in with a high level of wanting to be transparent in the work that they're doing, a level of accountability that I've seen over the period since we started this process is obviously there. The visioning, all of that, we're seeing every time we meet. We are going to continue to push the envelope because that is our responsibility to the residents and to the county to make sure we're asking the hard questions and that we are also bringing some levels of innovation to some of the ideas presented to us. That is still part of our responsibility, and we will always still ask some tough questions in a respectful manner, always, I expect. And but I just wanted to convey my gratitude to all the presenters who come and those who just are here to just support the work that's being done. I want to thank you and have a happy Valentine's Day when it comes. Stay warm.
We're adjourned.
And we adjourn. Thank you. I always forget that.